on the recording?
7 feet away.
You good? We're recording? All right. Council members, remember when you're speaking.
Recording in progress.
Oh, there we are. Council members, remember when you're speaking to turn your microphones on and speak directly into them. And good evening. I'd like to welcome you and call to order the June 10th Port Orchard City Council regular meeting. And in the actions we're about to take, I would like to remind us of our guiding principles. And are we raising the bar in all of our actions? Are we honoring the past but not living in the past? Are we building positive connections with our community and outside partners? And is the decision-making process building a diverse, equitable, and inclusive community? Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Council, we have a published agenda. Are there any proposed modifications? Councilmember Rosapepe, go ahead.
I'd like to add a discussion item on number 8, a discussion item for the council on transportation impact fees.
Motion by Councilmember Rosapepe, second by Councilmember Diener. And this was at the request of Mr. Bond. He emailed some information and he was looking for some direction.
Thank you.
All right, all in favor of adding a discussion item, transportation impact fees, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That item has been added to the agenda this evening. Are there any other? Councilmember Chang, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I would like to remove consent agenda item D and make it a business item. Okay, yeah. I don't know if I have to state a reason, but the reason is I just want to state that I'm a employee of DOT and I don't benefit financially from this resolution, but we can do that in business.
Okay, there's a motion to add it because Councilmember Chang feels he may have a conflict. I don't see a conflict, but an attorney doesn't. But
No, I want to state the connection.
Okay, you could probably state that at the beginning of the consent.
Well, can I state it now?
Certainly.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to state that I am an employee of WashDOT, and one of the procedures and right-of-way mentions standards by WashDOT and the Federal Highways. Even though it is the agency that I work for, I'm not associated with making that decision, and I don't benefit financially. However, if anyone would like me to recuse myself from voting on that item, I would be happy to do so.
Members, you wanting Councilmember Chang to recuse himself?
No.
Go.
So you're withdrawing your motion then to move that to a business?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Consent agenda is as it's read.
Any other proposed amendments? All right, is there a motion to approve?
Yes, Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Seconded.
A motion by Councilmember Rosapepe, a second by Councilmember Trineri to approve the agenda as it was amended. All in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the agenda has been set for this evening. We are to our first citizen comment period. Anyone wishing to address the council can step to the microphone. Please identify yourself for the record. And then the clerk, you have 3 minutes to address the council. So you'd step to the microphone, state your name, and you have 3 minutes to address the council. And if you could raise that microphone up a little closer to your mouth, we'll hear you better. All right.
My name is Kevin Fox. You need my address as well?
You don't have to.
Oh, okay. I come before you today representing a nonprofit called Communitas. We provide care to adults with developmental disabilities. And we've been incorporated within Kitsap County since 1971. We have several homes throughout Kitsap County, and we also have about 5 locations within Port Orchard specifically. One of our group homes is located on Harrison Avenue, and they've been around since about 1980, and it's just down the road from City Hall. Recently, some of our employees have started receiving parking tickets when there's overflow from the driveway. We are required by the state to provide 24/7 care to individuals that we support, and all employees working at the group home are required to have a vehicle and current vehicle insurance. As a result, we can have anywhere between 4 to 6 cars parked at that particular residence for at least 8 hours per shift. We always ensure to fill up the driveway completely before we have any of our employees park in the street. Looking at the different parking options that are available, there doesn't really seem to be something that fits. We can't buy a parking pass because the employees don't live at the residence. And we also have unfortunately, we do have regular turnover of employees. So the vehicles change relatively frequently. So we're coming before you seeking solutions. That's all I have to say.
But if you could potentially leave your name and phone number and then maybe an email address with the clerk, and potentially our land use committee or staff could to look into your issue, and maybe we can find a solution, or at least look into the issue for you the best we can.
And thank you, Kevin.
If you could maybe step aside there and fill that out. The
yeah,
clerk
sorry.
will let somebody else, if they want to address the council, and anybody else, please step forward.
Good evening. Make it shorter here. My name is Karen Hayek, and I have a business in downtown. And I'm nervous, so I'll see my note. Anyway, I put in information on the Port Orchard community page, and I was asked by 2 councilmen to show up and talk about it. So my comment was about the parking. Of course, it's been a downtown issue for everybody. And I've been in this kind of business, my resale vintage business, for 35 years, but I've only been here for 5, and it's been continuous parking issues that every 2 hours, as a person who has a business, we have to move our cars or we will get ticketed, right? So what happens is we move and we have to lock our stores and go do that and lose customers or whatever. Many customers are complaining about it too. It's not just us business people that are bringing it up, because now the market, you're ticketing on Saturdays now. So that is really becoming an issue. This last Saturday, I got ticketed 3 times in a row, an hour within each time. Not 2 hours. I never parked for 2 hours straight. And it just is aggravating. And I know there's a lot of parking issues downtown because there's not a lot of parking. But I just like you guys to look at the possibility of maybe us business people, if nothing else, we could have an area where we go to, because I don't want to park in front of the store and take up space for all the people that would like to come downtown. And out of the 100 comments that were on my message on Port Orchard Community, many people said they don't even try, or they come and they go round and round and round. You know, and it's when there's events. During the week, it's not as bad. So I just wanted to come and say, because I put it on the thing, I thought I'd better tell everybody. But I park up the hill sometimes too, because I want to leave the front street open for customers. But then I have to really lock my store, walk up the hill, and see if I've been ticketed, marked. And that's something that is, a problem all day long if you're opening your store for the entire day. Also, one other thing is the 4-hour parking in back. I've done that too, which is fine. I can walk up to my store, but I still have to check it in 4 hours and leave my store again. So we need some solutions, because people are very frustrated with this. As I found when I wrote my little note on Port Orchard community page, I was shocked that I had so much response. And it was all because against the issues that the town has for parking. So the other item is that...
Excuse me, but your time is up for this
Okay,
evening.
thank
All right,
you.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Okay.
comments.
Thank you,
Anyone else?
Karen.
Councilmember Fenton, please wait to be recognized before you speak.
Oh, I wanted to tell her thank you.
I'll take care of that. Thank you. Others wishing to address the council?
Good evening. My name is Pat St. Laurent. I am a resident of downtown Port Orchard. Pretty sure most of you know why I'm here, because every single night, the peace and quiet of downtown is disturbed substantially by drivers of cars that are extremely loud. The drivers are extremely disrespectful, both in terms of the noise they make and also the speed at which they race down Bay Street. Every single night of the week, somewhere between 8:30 and sometimes 2 a.m., there's a handful of us that have been in touch with the port. We know what's going on with the signs. We know what's going on with regards to the police force and their ability to enforce in the parking lot, which is not an excuse for the absence of any kind of patrol on Bay Street. And to be honest with you, we've kind of had it. It's been going on for a long time. We sat here 3 years ago having a conversation about this. We had an email communication back in September. I came to council in January, and we had more communication after that. And last night and the night before and tonight, it'll be exactly the same. So those are my comments. And there's a few people behind me who probably will express similar comments. Okay?
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Others wishing to address the council this evening? Please step forward.
Hi, Kitty City Council. My name is Kelly May. I'm here to address the excessive noise from car revving, racing late into the night in downtown on Bay Street. We have law-abiding, tax-paying citizens suffering from lack of sleep, and this needs to be addressed immediately. According to Medical News Today and Healthline, lack of sleep affects the health of the entire body. This has been going on for a very, very long time. It reduces the ability of memory in the brain to learn, increases production of stress hormones, hurts our cardiovascular system, increased risk of disease, increased risk of infection, weight gain, and reduction in fertility in males and females. Also, less killer T cells in the body to fight off things like cancer. Instead of just coming to complain, I've brought a few solutions that might actually help if implemented. Number one is have officers or volunteers patrol downtown every night for about 2 to 3 weeks, giving tickets to every offender every night. This would solve the issue if the consequences were unfavorable enough. Only light patrolling would be needed thereafter to keep the peace moving forward. The second one is to update our noise ordinances, put speed bumps and noise cameras that would take pictures of license plates and issue tickets automatically of offenders. The third is to raise awareness for needed respect and kindness to our sleep-deprived citizens by partnering with car clubs and designating a daily time or spot for car enthusiasts to hang out and rev their engines and to not disturb the peace moving forward. Thank you.
Your comments?
Thank you.
Sir, go ahead.
Hello, Ian Wilhelm, I own Unity Skate Shop downtown. I'm here to bring up the noise downtown also every evening, which is usually starting about 10 o'clock, going sometimes 3:30, 4:30 in the morning. It is the cars, very loud, and it is also they're racing up and down Bay Street. It's been going on for a few years now. We've called the police a few times. I've go down there quite often to try and calm situations or try and stop or whatever. But there's drinking going on. It's not always kids. There's also Navy personnel down there. And they get pushy when you tell them, hey, can you guys stop? We have people right here living in the hillside. It's loud. We get a lot of pushback. I always film it on my phone. I have lots of videos and lots of pictures. But if you guys really want to see what they're doing, drive up Port Orchard Boulevard and you'll see the screech marks all over the road, all the way from the top to the bottom. There's burnout marks all over the place. We're just hoping to put a stop to it. It's getting crazy. And with summer coming up here, it's probably gonna increase more. So we'd like to see some kind of increase in patrols. One of the issues with the patrols, though, is you can see the patrol cars, and I've been down there a couple times after calling the police and hoping to meet them down there, but you can see the patrol cars coming, so the kids or whoever's down there will either turn their music down or hide their alcohol, or do whatever they can to when they see the police come. So I don't know how to solve it, because a lot of it is kids, and it is our kids, but it's not all our kids. I've seen older people there, lots of, like I said, Navy personnel. And then you have all the homeless down there in the winter that hang out underneath and sleep underneath the gazebos and stuff. So you get the mix of the two, and we've seen fights. We've seen, I mean, all kinds of craziness going down there at night. I don't know if cameras might help or added patrols, and I'm not sure what the answer or solution is, but it's been going on for a while, and with summer coming up, it's going to be pretty crazy.
I appreciate that comment, and we are working with the port. It is the port's property.
Understand.
And, yeah, and they need for us to be able to trespass the people. They need to, there's a certain signage that they have to put down for our police officers to be able to take action.
Yeah.
So.
It's a nice place to hang out,
It
you know,
is,
in
it
the
is,
evening, but
we don't, yeah, if they're not behaving, so
Yeah.
it's difficult for our police officers to do much unless they're acting out in the moment, which we indicated they don't. So that's
Right.
that's the unfortunate thing. So appreciate
Well,
your
thank you.
comments.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, since you kind of cracked that open a little bit,
Yeah.
I just want to advise that this is something we're seeing all over Port Orchard. I live over where Kaiser Permanente Clinic, and I hear it until about 2 o'clock in the morning. So it's something that we're all facing just about anywhere we live in Port Orchard and the surrounding areas.
And when I visit other cities, I'm saying it's unfortunate behavior everywhere, not just in Port Orchard. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Josephine Blanton, and I live on Kitsap Street, and I too have the issue with the noise volume. And I would like to think that the city council would want to be proactive on this, especially since all the growth in downtown. I would think the condos that are being built, I certainly would not buy a condo because of the noise volumes. So I think the council and the city needs to be a little bit proactive so that we can grow the community. But at this point, I wouldn't buy anything down here in Port Orchard. I did 20 years ago when it was quiet, but it's no longer the same.
Thank you for your comment.
Thanks.
Anyone else wishing to address the council? Go ahead. Jerry, we haven't seen you in ages.
I know. I'm the only person sitting in this room.
Welcome back.
Thank you. You don't have an old grouch here. Okay, my name is Jerry Harmon. I live on Kitsap Street. And I got a notice about this, and I have heard the revving up of the cars, and it sounds like they're racing through town. So I wanted to come down tonight and find out about the issue. But while I was sitting here, it brought back it's still current memories. I really think that I know that they're expensive, but the cameras on Bay Street and Sydney, and probably the same thing at Tremont and Sydney, because the number of people that run the lights is phenomenal. I had a Kitsap Transit bus come through on me last summer. I've had a double tanker septic tank guy that did not want to stop, and this is where the light had been totally green for me to pull out, because I've learned that I have to look both ways after the light turns green, and I think it could bring in a lot of income, because I don't think I've ever been at that light lately that there isn't a person that runs that light after the people coming down that have the right to pull out. And so it slows me pulling down as an old person. I want to make sure that it's clear, so then people behind me are held back. But I think that it also, if you could get a few, and I was thinking, well, what's going to stop them? I think it's got to be costly, and it's got to be time consuming. So a new law that anybody brought in for racing through town or extreme noise in that, being part of a race team, that maybe it should be a week in jail, no exemptions, and a high charge, maybe $500 just for costing them. If it costs them that a few times, they might change their mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
My name is Ron Ryder, and I too am here about the noise because I'm tired of going to bed at night with a loud fan next to my bed and earplugs in so I don't have to listen to these people on the waterfront. I used to like to live downtown, but not so much anymore. We're investing all this money in City Hall, new pump station, new city center, but we aren't taking care of the problems down here. I realize there's problems all over the city, but we don't have enough police presence downtown. I presented the mayor and the police chief a signed petition over 3 years ago expressing about 10 people's concerns with the noise, and we were told that they didn't have the resources, they didn't have enough police on staff. Well, now I hear we've got the most police on staff that we ever have. And I, as a taxpayer, I want to see something going on down there. Not just some cop driving through on his way home or to another call. We need regular policing downtown. It would probably work if somebody had an unmarked car. They could sit over there behind Peninsula Bevco and observe it firsthand. But I was a former city councilman, and I would be more than happy to donate my time to sit down with a committee and try and come up with some solutions for this. And I would recommend that some kind of ordinance be drafted to take care of the loud noise so that not just downtown, but people racing or people revving their engines, which is going on all over, police can pull them over wherever they're at, get a decibel meter out and say, you're over the limit, you've got 30 days to fix it or you're getting a ticket. That's just one idea that came up. A lot of ideas are all Wild West stuff, and I prefer not to go there. Let's see. I mean, I've got videos. I've called 911 multiple times. At some point when nothing ever changes, it's like, why am I wasting my time? So I hope that we don't have to get a bigger group of people down here to complain before we see some action downtown. And feel free to give me a call, and I'll make time to sit down with the committee and we can hash over some ideas. I know the port's on board.
Ron, your time's up this evening.
Okay. They said that their boaters are fed up too.
Thank you.
Others wishing to address the council? And we are waiting on the port to put up the signs so that we can enforce it, so the ball's in the port's hands. So, all right, not seeing anybody else raising their hand, I'm going to close the first citizen comment period. Oh, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tamara Peterson. I'm a resident of City of Port Orchard. My home is actually right on Bay Street. And besides the commotion at the park, there is tremendous amount of racing up and down Bay Street every night. And one of the things that I noticed is that people are saying, well, the Port of Bremerton is in control or in charge of the park down there, but the street, I would believe, is the responsible of the Port Orchard Police Department. So I don't see many cars go up and down that street at night. at 25 miles an hour, and that's what it is. And they are not going 25 miles an hour. So this is a problem that it's mostly during the evening, but when they go at that speed, they are revving their engines, they are backfiring, they are doing whatever they want to make noise. And it seems like when you go on the community pages and you say anything, you get this backlash of, oh, it's just a bunch of kids having fun. But these are residences that are trying to sleep and live and watch a movie and talk to their family members. So I'm really asking that something be done, whether it's those blinking lights that say the speed limit is 25, you are going 35, or whatever it is. So if there's anything I can do to help, I would be glad to do that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Yep. Come on up, Mary. See you back there.
Hi there. My name is Mary Johnson. I'm a citizen here at Port Orchard. And everything's already been said, but I didn't want to sit there and let you think that it didn't bother me. It does have an effect on health, sleep, on children going to school if they're woken up in the middle of the night because of the noise and they can't get back to sleep. And then they come to school and they're dragging and confused. And all the things that I've listed, I have my list here too. But I just wanted to be part of this. Actually, I had something here I wanted to play for you, but I don't think it'll work. So, yeah, it's not going to work. But anyway, I just wanted to say that I'm in with everybody else, and I didn't want to sit there and have you think that I wasn't. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any last? All right. Last call. Councilman? We have attendees online. Okay. Thank you. Jean, go ahead and bring whoever's on there online. If you wish to address the council and you're online, please use the raise your hand feature, and the clerk will bring you into the meeting.
Okay. We do have a couple attendees, and no one has raised their hand yet.
Okay. All right. I'm going to close the first citizen comment period. There's a second section in the tail end of the meeting. And we're going to move on to our consent business items. The first is our consent items.
Consent, yeah.
Go ahead, Councilmember Rose.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. A motion by Councilmember Rosapepe, a second by Councilmember Diener to approve the consent agenda as presented.
No, it's not.
As amended.
Yep.
It wasn't amended.
It wasn't amended.
It wasn't.
Oh, that's
No.
right. He
We
didn't.
talked about it.
No, that's what I said, just as presented.
As presented.
It was discussed.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Consent agenda has been approved for this evening. We have two presentations. The first is a repeat for those on the Sewer Advisory Committee who got this afternoon.
Utilities Committee.
But we have a presentation on our sewer rate study. Mr. Ryan, or Mr. Crocker, this is actually you. Or Mr. Ryan, the tag team over there?
It's both of us, but I'm going to do the introductions, and Director Crocker is going to assist in all the financial and rate information from the city's perspective. So I wanted to introduce our consultants. We have Tagi Acker from the FCS Group, and then Zach Hazel, also present from Bowman Group. They are going to present on the sewer rate study. The city is actually undertaking two studies right now. We are in the middle, or we are at the tail end of our general sewer plan update, which we will have in draft this month. That will come in front of the council at a future date. And then we've also been working on this rate study. So with that, we'll turn it over to our consultants.
All right, thank you. Good evening, council. So as Dennis mentioned, we've got the results of a sewer utility rate study, and our agenda tonight will be in three different pieces. We'll talk about the, next slide please. the revenue requirement, the cost of service analysis, and the rate design task. So each of these elements answers a key question in a comprehensive rate study. We'll first talk about the revenue requirement, and essentially what that is how much revenue do you need to recover from customers to pay for the costs of the sewer utility, operating, capital, annual debt service. So it's more of a revenue sufficiency analysis. And then Zek will talk about the cost of service analysis and the rate design. So if the revenue requirement is trying to determine how big is the pie, how much revenue do you need, the cost of service analysis looks at how do you slice up that pie amongst your different customer groups. And then lastly, the rate design will be proposing an alternative rate structure different than what you're currently doing, but one we think that is simpler and more fair for the customers of your sewer utility. So for the revenue requirement, we typically start with your adopted budget for operations and maintenance. We look at a couple of years of actual revenues and expenditures, compare that against the budget, and that essentially forms the basis of our cash flow forecast. We also incorporate annual debt service payments that you have for existing outstanding loans, principal and interest payments, and also make sure that you have enough in your reserve accounts to handle any sort of emergency types of things that come up, working capital reserves for the day-to-day fluctuations in revenues and expenditures. So that's more or less what we're doing with the revenue requirement, and we'll get into more details with the cost of service analysis and the rate design further on in the presentation. Before we get into the results, I wanted to note where the rates have been. And so this is a screenshot of rates from 2016 through 2020. This is just one of your roughly 20 customer classes, single-family residential. In 2016, the rates were for every 2 months, $111 for a typical single-family customer. That has increased to $163 by 2020, and it's been at that level since 2020. No changes since that time. So comparing that rate of $163 against what's been happening with consumer price index, inflationary measures, on slide 5, please. Perfect, yeah. You can see somewhat of a loss of buying power where back in 2020, $163. If that rate had increased with inflation, it'd be close to $200 every 2 months. It's still at $163. So loss of buying power there, in part, has been helped with strong customer growth, adding new customers that pay that bi-monthly rate as well, but there's some catching up to do with some of the cost inflation we've seen in the past few years.
And Doug, I just want to add for the council members, I put 3 copies on the desk in between, paired up by 2, so you each can share. But the full rate class of our sewer rate code. So when we talk about restructuring, take a look at what's in front of you there. I wanted you guys to be able to see all the different rate classes, the 21 plus different sewer rate classes that we have to administer, which we'll talk about later, proposing a change.
Thank you. All right, next slide, please. We'll touch briefly on financial policies. There are 2 policies that are called out in an adopted resolution. There's the general reserve, which is 60 to 90 days worth of operating revenues. That's to make sure that the operating fund is well functioning, that there are daily, weekly, monthly variations in revenues and expenditures, making sure you have enough in there to cover payroll and other types of expenses that come up. There's a second reserve that is set, we don't touch as a part of the rate study. It's more of an emergency type of reserve, and that's roughly 25% of annual operating expenditures. So 2 types of reserves that we're making sure are maintained throughout the study period, which goes through 2030. And then lastly, debt service coverage. This would apply if you're going out for revenue bonds. Right now, the sewer utility just has state loans, so this doesn't really apply, but if you were to go out for revenue bonds in the future, we just make sure that the rates are set to cover the minimum requirements in terms of debt service coverage. So the legal minimum typically is net revenue of the sewer utility has to be 1.25 times annual debt service. And that's essentially a cushion so that if there's a little bit of variations of revenues or expenditures, some unexpected changes, that makes bondholders more comfortable that you can make that debt service payment throughout typically what is a 20-year term for revenue bonds. All right, so one of the key things we wanted to note for today is the rates that we're calculating and will be recommending are set based on the cost of providing service, operations, maintenance, capital projects. There's all sorts of costs that we build into the rate study, but typically it's those two buckets, operations and maintenance and capital. Operations and maintenance, that's a little bit more predictable, more steady year to year. The capital projects really vary year to year depending on how many projects you're undertaking in a given year and what the size of those projects are. So we try to balance all of that over a 6-year period to make sure that you have enough money coming in to cover your costs in what we hope is more of a steady fashion in terms of rate adjustments. Next slide, please. So I noted that we typically start with your adopted budget. So we have the 25-26 adopted budget in the rate forecast. The forecast period goes through 2030. And so we take that 26 budget and more or less we increase it anywhere from 3 to 5% per line item, depending on what the type of line item it is. General inflationary type line items will be about 3%. Medical benefits will be about 5%. What you pay for treatment services, that goes up by about 3% per year as well. And that just gives us an estimate of what we think the operating expenditures will be throughout the life of the forecast. In terms of how you pay for capital projects, that has an impact on the rate study as well. There's cash and then there's debt. Some benefits for cash is that you avoid interest costs that you'd get if you were to borrow for it. But one drawback of paying cash only is that existing customers pay the cost of the capital projects, where one benefit of borrowing spreads that capital cost over, say, a 20-year repayment period. As new customers connect to the utility, they begin paying the bi-monthly rate, part of which goes to cover the annual debt service payment. So there are some pros and cons of using cash or debt. One benefit of debt is, as we've seen in the past few years, cost inflation has been pretty significant, in particular for capital projects. So to the extent that you can complete projects a little quicker by borrowing for a portion of the capital projects, you can avoid some of the impacts of cost inflation if you were to do it in the next 1 or 2 years versus 4 or 5 years down the road. So there are some benefits there. But typically we recommend some sort of hybrid approach where you have rates coming in each year, paying for a part of the capital program. For some of your larger projects, we recommend borrowing in part to help spread that cost over a longer time period. Those are some of the policy items that we considered as a part of the rate study. The next slide, we talk about the capital improvement program. It's roughly $50 million over the next 6 years or so. And these are unescalated, so we apply that 3.5% estimated cost inflation to these figures, which would bring that total 6-year capital spend to about $60 million. Pretty small font, but you can see at the top there, more of your annual repair and replacement type projects. You have quite a few lift and pump stations, force main, some small projects, some large projects. All of that feeds into the rate forecast. And on the next couple of slides, we talk about how do you fund those capital projects. So starting out at a 30,000 foot level, we have the annual capital spending here shown in the green and orange stacked columns. The green portion, somebody else is paying for that portion of the capital projects, the county, WashDOT, developer agreements. The orange portion of the stacked column, that would come from utility ratepayers, whether it's rates, whether it's borrowing and using rates to pay for debt service, using cash on hand in reserves to pay for a portion of the capital program. That's the general mix. It's roughly 50-50. And on the next slide, we have the capital funding strategy broken out into more components. We have quite a few low-cost loans that the city has secured. You can see them listed on the far right there. Quite a few less than 1% interest rates. The largest one, about 2.6% interest for the Marina Pump Station. Those are really good rates. If you were to go out to borrow today, it would be closer to 5%. So, kudos on the city and city staff for going after these low-cost loans and securing them. That definitely helps reduce the costs that would eventually make it into the rates that customers pay. We do anticipate some additional borrowing in the next 3 or 4 years. That's the orange slice revenue bonds, about 20% of the capital program. A small slice of grants, not much. And then there's about 36% of the capital funding strategy would come from either WashDOT, Kitsap, or developer agreements. That's a big chunk of your capital program. Capital facilities charges, that's about $5 million. That's fees that as new development, new customers connect to the system, they pay a one-time fee that would go directly towards paying for future capital projects. That's that pink slice there. And then about 30% of the capital funding strategy would come from rates and cash you already have in the bank. And rates would be for cash funded or to pay for some of the debt service on future borrowing.
And if I may, that slice where it says Kitsap, that's large, it's Kitsap Transit and the lift station out at Ruby Creek that I believe that's what that represents, not Kitsap County.
All right, so this is the last slide for the revenue requirement. What we have here are the stacked columns. These are your financial obligations through 2030. The green portion, that's your operating and maintenance. 25, 26 is the budget. 27 through 2030 is the budget with those inflation assumptions applied to the various line items. And then that orange slice is debt service, both existing and new debt service. You see a bump there in 2028 as we project there to be some borrowing. That's the principal and interest payments that would be associated with that debt issuance. And so overall revenue needs for the next 6 years or so would require 3.5% additional revenue per year. So if you were to keep your current rate structure, and in a few minutes we'll be talking about an alternative to your current structure, but right now single-family customers pay about $163 every 2 months. 3.5% per year would increase that to about $169 in 2026, $175 in 2027, so on and so forth to 2030, where it'd be about $194. Again, that's your current structure. An alternative that we will be recommending will actually show an initial decrease to the single-family sewer rate and ending at quite a bit lower than the $194 you see on the far right. But my colleague Zach will walk you through the next couple of tasks: cost of service and rate design.
All right, thank you, Tagi. As Tagi mentioned, he was walking you through the revenue requirement, which sets the overall needs of the utility in terms of a rate perspective. Now we're going to talk about how to divide up the revenue requirement between your different classes. In other words, as Tagi used the example, we've determined how big the pie is, and now we're going to slice the pie between the different customer classes. You can see on this slide, it's probably a little hard to read, that's okay. We got 18% of the existing revenue collection comes from your non-residential customers, and 82% come from your residential customers. And those are the two classes that we're going to examine for this cost of service analysis. So this slide is basically a diagram showing you how we would conduct a cost of service analysis at a high level. We start at the top of this diagram with your base revenue requirement. That's how much you need to collect in rates. And then we divide that cost up into 3 different cost buckets. We have your customer costs, which is really related to billing issues and that kind of dealing with your customer accounts. And then you have flow costs, which are really related to your collection system, your lift stations, those kinds of costs. And then lastly, you have your treatment costs. And those costs are very directly billed with the joint sewer agreement, and that is just a line item in your budget. Now, each of these different costs are incurred by different customer statistics, if that makes sense. So for example, for the customer costs, you're going to have to issue more bills as you add more accounts to the system. That is a direct correlation there between accounts and customer costs. And so when we do the cost of service analysis, we determine how much of your cost bucket goes into customer costs, in this case $180,000, and we divide that up between your classes based on how many accounts those two classes have. So for example, the residential class has 94% of your accounts, and the non-residential class has 6% of your accounts. And so that is how we divide up the cost for customer billing expenses. 94% goes to residential, or $169,000, and 6% goes to non-residential, or $11,000. And then we do this for all three functions, customer, flow, and treatment, to determine the overall cost to serve each class. And this next slide gives a summary of that analysis. So this shows each class's cost recovery as a percentage of the cost to serve that class. So to make that very concrete, you notice that residential is listed as 107%. What that means is that residential currently is paying 107% of its cost to serve. It's overpaying by about 7% relative to its overall revenue. On the other hand, if you look at non-residential, they are paying 76% of their cost of service. So there's a gap there that they're being subsidized from the residential class. They're only paying 76% of the cost that it actually costs to serve that class. Now, when we do these analyses, there's a lot of wiggle room, a lot of assumptions we have to make. So we would say that if it's within 5% on either end of that line, we might say it's good enough. In this case, we can see a clear gap between non-residential and its cost of service, as in they are not paying their full share. So that gives us the guidance on the cost of service analysis to then go into the rate design step of the analysis. And in the rate design step, we're going to basically figure out how to actually bill these customer classes to collect fairly the cost of service and to collect the revenue requirement that Tagi talked about. And lastly, we're going to add a couple other goals for this rate design thing. So we're doing three things at once. We're collecting all the revenue we need, and we're collecting all the revenue that's accrued to each class. And lastly, we're going to make a couple rate design changes that the staff has proposed. So the current rate schedule, as Noah described and is in front of you, is somewhat complex. It has 21 different rate classes, and each class, some of them might have multiple rates within that class. So it's a very complicated rate schedule. Now, there are some advantages to a rate schedule of that complexity, but in general, there are also some major disadvantages. For one, a rate schedule this long is difficult for customers to understand and figure out how much they're going to be billed. It's also very burdensome for staff who have to check how many laundry machines are going into a laundromat or something like that, or count the chairs in a restaurant to make sure that they're fitting into the large restaurant category and not the small restaurant category. So there's a lot of burden going on the staff for administrating this rate schedule. And the other thing is that it really obscures the relationship between the impact on the sewer system that a particular customer might have and the cost that it takes to serve that particular customer. A large restaurant, for example, gets a flat rate of, I think, something over $900 per month, and that it is just a flat rate. It doesn't matter how much flow that large restaurant is putting into the sewer system, they get billed something over $900 a month. So you can see that that kind of obscures the relationship between the impact on the sewer system and the rate they're paying. So all those issues combined have basically led to the city staff wanting to simplify the rate schedule, and we think we've figured out a way to do that. But we have to take a small detour first before we get to our proposed solution.
Can I ask a quick question around that?
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't know if I was supposed to wait to the end.
Go ahead.
Okay. I just have a question about one of the comments you just said about the usage in a restaurant, right? And it being flat. It's the same at the residential rate too, right? I live in the same size house as my neighbor. There's 2 people in my house and there's 7 next door. I don't believe their usage is most likely going to be the same as mine.
Mm-hmm. That is very fair. One thing I will say is that on average, residential accounts tend to have much more similar flow. Now, in your example, those two might have very different flows. But if you look to a commercial side of thing, it's really variable depending on the size of the business, how much business they're actually doing. So your point is well taken. A particular ERU might have more or less usage than average, but residential does tend to be more concentrated around the average usage than a non-residential account would be.
So our biggest expense in the sewer operation is the processing when it gets to the West Side utility. And so in this analysis that they've done, they've measured our average flows in our winter months so that we know that we're not counting irrigation systems. And so that's how so just like our water analysis and the consumption model that we went to with water, so more water you use, the more you're going to pay. And this is where we're heading. This recommendation is we're measuring the flows, and the higher the flow you're generating, the more impact you're having to the system, and the more you should have to pay.
I got a
Go ahead.
question
Go ahead,
too.
Councilmember.
But on the house that you brought up, it would still be the same though, between two people and a household. So even though you got the flow going, that's, what counts is just the house itself.
That is
So-
that is
Correct.
correct. We don't have meters on
Right.
the,
I have
on
the
the
same
on the sewer
payment
pipe.
as my neighbor does.
Exactly, that's correct, yep.
I see Councilmember Warden has his hand raised. Go ahead, Councilmember.
Yeah, with restaurants though, it's also a different level of service that's required. We're required to deal with their grease traps. The amount of fog that they put into the lift stations and down the sewer lines, which requires more flushing. Definitely there is a difference in the level of service that they require. It does make sense to me. It's more than just a flow. I wish there was more flow from restaurants to try to lessen the impact of the fog. But the fog definitely makes a huge difference coming from restaurants. They can have grease traps all they want. They're still there's still quite a bit, and our lift stations reflect that. So
Very, very good point, Councilmember. Other comments at this point? I'm going to continue with the
Eric, what's
presentation.
fog?
Fats, oils, and grease.
Okay, thanks.
So, if I may,
Yes.
not only do we have more resources required for what you're calling non-residential or basically business community, but we also had more administrative costs with factoring in our current rate structure, which is crazy. Yet they're paying a much smaller amount, and as you, using your term, they're not paying their fair share at this point. Is that correct?
Yeah, that seems to be the conclusion of the cost of service analysis.
All right, thank
That's right. All right. So we are going to propose a much simpler way and equitable way and collecting the revenue requirement that Tagi talked about. We're going to propose a rate design that does all three things. So first, a bit of background. Port Orchard and Westtown Utility District, they share the South Kitsap Water Reclamation Facility. Their agreement began in 1983 and it was last updated in 2014. Every winter, there is a count of the equivalent residential units in each district. An equivalent residential unit, also called an ERU, is just a way of measuring how much flow a business might send into the sewer system, and we're going to base that on the average usage of a single-family dwelling unit. That's why it's called an equivalent residential unit. For the agreement, an ERU is defined in this way. Every residence, every dwelling unit gets one ERU. So one single-family residence gets an ERU, one apartment gets an ERU, every residence gets one ERU. For non-residential customers, you take their flow and you divide it by 180 gallons per day or 700 CF, and that is their equivalent residential units or ERUs. And this is only measured during the winter months to determine their flow to the sewer system and not counting any irrigation because we assume they're not doing any irrigation in the winter months. So this next slide gives us some background. So we took a look at the water billing stats that we could get to determine the actual equivalent residential unit calculation for a single-family residence in Port Orchard, and we determined that it's actually closer to 117 gallons per day, not 180 gallons per day that we just showed you on the previous slide. And basically what that's saying is that we are actually, single-family residences are actually sending a lot less sewer flow to the system than the SKWRF agreement assumes. And that kind of puts more pressure on the single-family customers, all the residential customers really, to collect more of the cost of the sewer utility because we're presuming that they're sending more flow to the treatment facility than they actually are. And so to kind of solve for this discrepancy and make sure that we're fairly charging the sewer rates, we had basically three options. The first option would be to change the agreement with SKWRF to change the definition of a ERU to something closer to 117 gallons per day. But we did not presume that was going to be possible. So the other option would be to basically use two ERU definitions and say, for this business, they have perhaps 5 ERUs under our metrics and 3 ERUs under the SKWRF agreement. That also seems more complicated than it needs to be. You'd have to keep track of 2 different counts of ERUs. So our conclusion was we could instead use a weighting factor for those non-residential customers, where we count the ERUs precisely as we do already for the SKWRF agreement, but we charge them a higher rate per ERU to fairly recover the costs of their flow. All right. So this rate calculation table basically has everything I just talked about summarized in one table. So at the top here, we have the ERUs per the SKWRF contract. For residential, 5,700 really. For non-residential, 1,100. Then in that next section, we have the cost of service by class. This is, again, totaling up all the costs for customer costs, flow costs, treatment costs. Residential is 5.2 million and non-residential is 5.6 million. And then this last section takes the cost of service and divides it by the number of ERUs and divides it by the number of billing periods, which is 6, to get the bi-monthly rate per ERU. So this is that weighting factor I was talking about. You'll see that residential is paying $151 under this proposed method for fiscal year or calendar year 26. And non-residential is paying $235. So that's that weighting I was just talking about. They're paying more per ERU, but you get to continue counting their ERUs as you already do for the SKWRF agreement. So that's all very abstract. Let's get more concrete by looking at some sample bills. The first one here is a residential customer. Under the current system, they pay $163 bi-monthly or $978 annually. Under this new system, they would pay $151.58 bi-monthly or $909 annually. And so their bi-monthly rates actually decrease. And that's because, like I showed you before, we're trying to bring non-residential up to speed for their actual cost of service. That actually gives residential customers a break. And later in this presentation, I'll show how their rates change through 2030 under this proposed method as well.
I got a quick question for you. So under the previous slide, slide 23, you show the residential rate would be 151 and non-residential 234. What was the non-residential number before? Or current, I should say, the current number.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that gets back to that rate schedule that you have with 21 different rates. There really isn't a single rate per ERU for non-residential because of that rate schedule.
Okay, so while we've got that for residential, we don't for non-residential.
Yeah, exactly. So the residential rate is $163 per ERU. Non-residential, it totally depends on which class they are.
How many fixtures you have, it's
Right,
like fixture
right.
counts. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why I handed out the code. If you look in the code, just grab a couple, you'll see all the different rate classes, and then you have to piecemeal it together by business type and by business category. So not a specific answer.
Okay, I just want to be sure I was following the table.
Yeah.
I think it's going to make a lot more sense as he gives you more examples.
Yes, I have a great example on this next slide here. This is a small school. So the top table shows the current billing method. The bottom table shows our proposed method. As you'll see in the top table, we are counting 132 units. And now, units totally depends on the rate class, but in this case, it means any personnel, students, janitorial staff, teachers, anybody in the building. And they get billed at $490 per unit. So in this example, this small school would pay $646.80 bi-monthly or $3,900 really annually. Now, when we look at their actual sewer flows based on the count the city already does for the SKWRF agreement, we'll see that they actually only have one ERU of usage, right? So they should really be billed at this $234.99 rate. That's that rate we calculated earlier for commercial customers.
I'm going to throw a wrench at you. I happen to know that small school, which is an elementary school, is not hooked to sewer. It is hooked. Don't they have a tank and a grinder pump? And are we making sure that we're covering our cost by changing this structure, the cost to pump that out?
I'm unfamiliar with the locations. I hadn't seen that, so
I can speak to that. When we do this analysis, we take all of the sewer billing data and we figure out how much these individual customers paid. So this customer, at least in the up to 2022, was paying a sewer bill at that rate.
They do. It's just that I just want to make sure that we're capturing. We have different costs for this particular customer and so as we dive into this deeper, we need to make sure that we're covering that cost. So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, if they're not sending flow to the system, then they probably shouldn't be.
Yeah.
How many of these quote-unquote small schools do we have, are we talking about?
Sidney Glenn.
Single. Okay.
Yeah. Probably City Glen. It might be the middle school too, but I'm not. I think it's got more than 132. There's one grade school.
I think there's at
Are
least
there-
2 then, because
Are there businesses that have the same treatment? Are there other businesses that have the same treatment as Sydney Glen using septic?
I'm aware of one.
Okay.
Eric, you got your hand raised?
Yeah, forgive me for not remembering your name. The presenter just said whether they're contributing to the system or not. Are we billing vacant buildings, vacant commercial buildings? Are we billing them?
To maintain their sewer connection, they have to pay their cost. Isn't that correct?
Okay, so the vacant commercials that we see, they're paying a monthly, bi-monthly.
They could disconnect from the system and not pay it. Most vacant buildings do not, because you would
Correct.
lose your capital facilities charge. And you have
Correct.
to pay those connections, and those are tens of thousands of dollars.
So they are paying. So I mean, I'm just curious the answer.
Yeah, so
They are paying.
they should be, unless they've disconnected from the system and then they have lost their capital facilities charge. And then that building, if that property ever was remodeled and, or redeveloped, they would have to pay the capital facility, because they no longer have a connection. And by maintaining that connection and paying that bill every month, they get credit. So when that, gets repurposed or whatever happens with that property, they get credit for the connection that they have. And don't have to pay
There's some good sized commercial sites that are vacant, and
Yeah.
they're just donating money to us every month or every bi-monthly.
They could be. They could be. It's there is no yes or no answer to this. It would vary from property to property. But
If I called you tomorrow and I asked you a question on a certain property, or asked
Sure.
Mr. Crocker,
Yeah, shoot me an email and we'll look into it.
Yeah.
sounds good.
Okay.
I like that question.
All right, so this is an example of, even though we showed you earlier that non-residential is underpaying, that's an average. And so some customers, like this one, would actually see a decrease in their bill under the proposed method. This next customer, however, is an example of a large restaurant. Now, as I mentioned earlier, they get paid a flat rate. They pay a flat rate of $978 bi-monthly. When we looked at this customer, they actually had 11 ERUs in the 2024 count of usage. And so their bill would actually go up quite substantially, up to $25.84 bi-monthly, or $15,000 annually. So some customers are underpaying, obviously, as I've demonstrated with the cost service analysis. Some customers are underpaying and will need to have their bills increase under this new method. This next one is a very stark example.
How many large restaurants do we have in the city?
Fast food, I would think primarily. There might be a few.
Is there one? I don't know. 150 seats or more. I don't know of one off the top of my head.
Do we have any?
Puerto Vallarta. Sorry.
Good call. Thank you, Councilmember Warden. Okay.
That could be, yeah. Could be.
That sure is an increase for the large restaurant.
Remember, we're basing this on your flows, your impact to the system. So this one is really telling.
So this is the county jail. They get billed in 2 segments. They get a base charge of $163 bi-monthly and a per unit charge of $32.60 for 284 units. So their current bi-monthly bill is $9,400. Now, according to the ERU count from 2024, they actually have 156 ERUs. So by our proposed method, they would be paying something closer to $36,000 or almost $37,000 bi-monthly, annual total of $220,000. So very striking about this particular one is that they actually make up 15% of the city's non-residential ERUs, and yet they only pay 3.5% of the non-residential costs. So if you look at that from even just focusing on the treatment perspective, which is directly billed one-to-one on the SKWF ERUs, you can see that they're underpaying. And so this customer would see a large increase in their bill.
And I have shared this slide with county commissioners and the sheriff, and while they weren't excited about it, they do understand. I mean, this is our citizens subsidizing that jail, where the bed days are going to go up, the cost to operate that jail, but that needs to be divided by all the cities in the county and not just the city of Port Orchard.
Right.
Okay, so I've shown you some bills that go down, I've shown you some bills that go up. Here's a bill that stays mostly the same. This is a small restaurant. Currently, they get billed for one unit at $489 bi-monthly, $2,900 annually. They have 2 ERUs, so they would be billed a bi-monthly bill of $469 or $2,200 annually. So their bill actually goes down by only $19, so not a big deal for this particular customer.
How many seats are in a small restaurant?
I don't remember, I should have noted that, I'm sorry.
Is there a medium-sized restaurant in this plan?
Not in this slide deck, there isn't.
So we have a discrepancy from one, okay,
High and a low.
From 1 to 140.
well, from $2,100 to $15,000, so.
All right, and then this next slide shows you the calculated ERU method with the proposed increases. Now, once again, this top table would be your current method, which is what we call across the board. This is not assuming any rate changes, 3.5% per year. You can see how the residential rate per ERU goes from 163 bi-monthly up to 194 bi-monthly. We didn't print the other 21 rate classes. This second table shows you the rate design method, and under this method, I'd like to draw your attention to the residential rate per ERU, that middle row. We are still increasing revenue by 3.5% because that is the revenue requirement. However, because of the rebalancing between the two classes, we actually go down for residential to $151.58 in that first year, and then we slowly climb back up to $173.94 by 2030. Non-residential gets that new rate of about $235 per ERU, regardless of any particular rate class. So, this next slide gives you a rate survey for some comparable jurisdictions. As you can see, this doesn't happen very often for me, but the proposed method is actually lower than the current method for the single-family customers. We assumed 10 CCF for a bi-monthly period for these particular comparisons. I was asked also how these other jurisdictions do their billing. I will say that most of them do something called it's like a base plus a volume rate. That would be hard to do in Port Orchard because not all of the water data is collected because Port Orchard doesn't run all of the water utility for the entire customer base, for the sewer customer base. They're kind of disconnected. And so that's why we propose this method, not a base plus commodity method, but we do this counting once every year anyway. And so we wanted to make advantage of the fact that you're already counting ERUs once a year, and you don't need to try and scrounge up water data from these other utilities on a bi-monthly basis. So this last slide just basically summarizes everything we just talked about. We see that revenue needs to increase by about 3.5% per year through 2030. And then the council can also decide if they'd like to continue with the existing rate structure or move to this more simplified and we would argue more equitable ERU structure. And that's it for the prepared material, but Taghi and I will answer any questions.
Questions or knee-jerk reactions? Councilmember Shane, go ahead.
Quick question. You know a lot of interesting trivia. So on slide 30, when you're talking about the bi-monthly of the competing cities, do you happen to know, do they all bill monthly or do any of them bill monthly?
There's a mix. That's okay. I don't remember for each individual one, but there is a mix between bi-monthly and monthly.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Diener?
I just have a question on slide 11. That's the breakdown of the capital improvement program costs. And it shows the $583,000 as a static annual preservation cost throughout the lifespan of the CIP. Why is it not prorated to the wildly different costs you see in the total row?
Yeah, great question. So this slide shows unescalated costs.
Okay.
However, when we do our rate modeling, we don't leave it unescalated. We escalate it to year of construction using that 3.5% inflation rate that Taghi mentioned earlier. So.
Okay.
Rose Pepe, go ahead.
Yeah, we had a robust discussion on this at the utilities meeting today. Again, and I think the mayor will talk about this, that, this is not something that we're taking a vote on tonight. This is, more of an educational. One of the questions that I asked was that they took a 10-year look at construction cost at 3.5, and I asked that, would that be low, if we looked at the last 5 years? And actually, correct me if I'm wrong, what was said was it was higher over the last five years, but they're starting to see a decrease in construction cost, so that the 3.5 is probably a realistic for projection in the future. So I just wanted to bring that up, that they did look at the short term as well as the long term on construction costs. That, quite frankly, that affects most of our infrastructure budget. Thank you.
Other questions? I think we're gonna touch this again.
We are, okay, yeah. I don't know that I have a ton of questions, so thank you for your information. It's a lot to digest, and for somebody who wasn't on one of these committees to be part of that, my first viewing of this evening. I know my initial gut reaction to seeing that is, man, we're putting more on the cost of, on the shoulders of our businesses that shoulder a heavy burden elsewhere. It does get us closer to true usage, right? And gets us closer that way. But the rest of our taxing system in the state and county, et cetera, is not set that way, right? More than 50% of our state budget is paid for by business, and here we're going to be adding more to that here in our city. So I want to be cognizant of that as I'm digesting this. But I know I'm going to have more questions, because even this last slide, continuing with the existing rate structure or moving to this new one, but as I was understanding, we are going to still keep the rate classes in both.
So
No.
the
We
proposed,
want to step away from this complex method.
But he still had different rate classes in his presentation.
the sample bills that I showed you we're looking at individual customers.
Okay.
They would all be billed at that $235 per ERU.
Okay.
Under the new method.
Based on ERU.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the only other thing I know we talked about, something that somehow made this harder or not harder, about the number of washing machines or number of chairs, capacities in a restaurant, which I believe is all information we require with their permitting process. So I think I don't see the burden there. I guess I'm confused on that.
We go out and inspect, and we quite frequently will see your professional office building. We'll see, a law office, and is it an example, or an engineering office. They might have a toilet, a sink, and then a sink in their kitchen to make coffee. I've seen examples where they're ripping the sinks out because they're paying a fixture. We've charged them by the fixture in their office building, and so they'll remove fixtures to pay less.
And they had that here in this?
That's yeah. We're charging by the fixture, and versus charging by, an office building might have 3 toilets in it, but it was just built that way, and they're paying more even though one person might be working in that office. That's probably not a real example, but what was proposing is stepping away from this, where we're counting fixtures, toilet, sinks, that types of things in a business.
Making it flow-based.
So then are we replacing that with the number of employees?
Well,
I mean, how do we?
The number of employees would increase the flow. So we're basing it, so we're counting.
So now we're going to need to additionally collect, so how many employees that business has?
No, we do not, because we measure their water usage in the winter month to gain what their average is, and that's how. And then we're going to apply that to this factor, because that's the water. If you run the tap, it goes down the drain, because we took your irrigation out of the mix because we measured it in the wintertime. So if you've got more people there and you're flushing the toilet more, the flows are larger, and we're measuring that. So we're measuring it by your water usage to determine what your sewer flow is.
Dividing it by 180 GPD.
And we do that every year.
And we do that every, that was going to be.
That's what we'll do every year, is that, I believe, correct, Noah?
Yeah, that's correct. So the mayor's correct. So the staff had tasked FCS group with simplifying because it is administratively burdensome. The mayor gave a good example, and this does happen where people remodel their office and they want us then to send out DCD and Public Works to inspect their newly remodeled office, and that's 3 now departments going out to figure out what could have possibly changed here, counting fixture counts, going back in history, figuring out what was originally there. So it is an administrative burden to administer the structure as is. If you read it over, you'll kind of get the flavor of why that could be problematic. But it's really going to a simple model of a flat fee per ERU. And we measure that each year, and because that's what we now have to pay the treatment facility plant. We have to pay them by the number of ERUs that are served. So we do that work now per our contract, and then we are charged that. What's different now is that we do that, but not all of the ERUs that we pay for are we being compensated for. And the county was a prime example of that, where do you still have that slide of how many ERUs it represented? The county jail?
It was 15% of the flow, but only 3.5% of the revenue.
So let me ask you this. We have a council member attending from his home in Arizona, right? How do we account for our many snowbirds, right? We lose a lot of folks in our Rotary group each winter time as well. So they're going to be...
So they're going to be charged 1 ERU. Residences are 1 ERU.
Okay.
Flat.
Just flat. We don't have.
So we're not going to be checking their usage.
It's very rare that a residential unit will tip over to be a 2 ERU. We do check it, but I can't think of a time where that occurred. I can't think of a time. Actually, that's not true. I'll tell you a time it occurred, and it was due to a leak. They had a large leak, and so lots of water. So it actually tipped them to a higher ERU category. And then when we sent out the bill, they said, hey, why are we being charged so much more on sewer? We're just a single residence. And we looked at the information. They said, well, was there a leak, a significant leak that would have tipped you over? And there was. And so then we were able to correct the bill and work with the customer on that. But that would be an example of where the actual measuring of the water consumption tipped you over into a new ERU. But it's very rare.
And how are you handling folks whose water usage is higher in the winter months than in the summer months?
I don't know that.
I would think a school would have a lower water usage in the summer months than in the winter months.
But they're vacant.
But now they have thousands of less people in a building.
Yeah. We're
Not
currently
flushing the toilet.
charging them
At the high school.
when the school's vacant also.
I'm just curious on how it works. If we're trying to make it more equitable, I want to make sure it's equitable for all.
Yeah, so single family is defined as 1 ERU.
Well, yeah, so I heard that. So now I'm asking about business, like, say, a school, for instance, is probably not going to have as much water usage in the summer than in the winter.
Right, and that was the example that we found, right? They actually only amounted to 1 ERU, and that could be why, yeah.
Okay.
You don't pay.
But I want to go back to, so the proposal, we go from this, 10-page rate structure to a single page, 1 flat fee for single-family residents, 1 flat fee per ERU for non-residential.
I'm all for efficiency and simplicity. I also, if we're going to say it in the name of equity, sorry, I don't know how that came out of my mouth, that I'd make sure to poke all the holes to.
Yeah.
Any last questions? Share your comments and questions. You know what? We want to get you as much into. I mean, what's our? When are we touching this again?
Yeah, so that's why we're just talking about this. We were hoping to time this, excuse me, with the sewer plan adoption. But I would say late summer to early fall, because this wouldn't be implemented until 2026, and we need some upfront time to change the code, change our systems. So late summer, July, August, we'll bring this back. And we can even bring it back to the Finance Committee, Utility Committee, if you guys want to talk about further questions.
So we don't have much for meetings in August, so, can we touch this again as a discussion item, maybe in early September? And then potential action late, end of September, October?
We can bring this back with the general sewer plan and do a work study session. And so we
Okay.
can discuss this further once we see the general sewer plan too.
Okay.
Yep, that's perfect.
Sound like a fair plan? That way we get a chance to touch this again.
Thank you very much. It's very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
right, thank you.
I like the idea of bringing it down. Are you simplifying it? I really like that.
Maybe put it on the government page too, so the community can come in.
Okay, we are to our next discussion item, or no, excuse me, presentation. We have our Employee Inclusion Commission Annual Report to the City Council. So Ms. Lund, this is you.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. In 2003, the Employee Inclusion Commission was formed. The resolution you adopted asked for an annual report, so we are ready tonight to present that report. I have some members of the Inclusion Commission here, and we're each going to talk for a little bit, and we're going to start with Beth Spalding, so I will let her get started.
Good evening, council members. It's my pleasure to begin the City of Port Orchard's Inclusion Commission Annual Update. So, in this presentation, we'll be addressing a few different areas. I will begin by giving some background on the history and purpose of the Inclusion Commission. I'll then turn it over to Heather Humphrey, who will explain what our goals are. Debbie Lund will then give an overview of 2024, and Alan Iwashta will paint a picture of our plans for the remainder of 2025. So for those of you who haven't met me previously, my name is Beth Spalding. I'm the Human Resources Analyst at City of Port Orchard. A few years ago, I did a body of research which I presented to City Council, and that experience resulted in the creation of the Inclusion Commission. I currently participate on Inclusion Commission as a member of the committee. So some council members may remember that presentation, or perhaps you viewed a video of it from council meeting archives. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, as well as to give everyone present a bit of a refresher, I'd like to provide some background to explain why this is something we care about and what prompted us to make this a priority. So the term inclusion has been a buzzword over the last few years, so you may have a reaction to hearing that term. You may have a gut response, either positive or negative, an idea of how you interpret that word. Because it has been so overused, I want to take a moment to thoroughly explain what I mean by it and make sure we're all talking about the same thing. So inclusion is something that permeates the culture and expectations at a workplace. If an employee feels included at work, they feel welcome, valued, comfortable, important, that they belong. A culture of inclusion is not something that happens naturally. It needs to be fostered and cultivated by leadership. You can probably think of a time when you felt comfortable and valued with a group of people, maybe your family or close friends. You can also probably remember a time when you felt that you were on the outside of a group, maybe trying to navigate a new language in a foreign country, or maybe even your first day on city council as you were thrust into new expectations and regulations. As those varying experiences come to mind, perhaps you can remember the stark differences in how you felt in those different situations. Which of those environments do you think you would be able to work more effectively in? An environment where you feel welcome and important, or an environment where you feel on guard and wary? I expect that you believe you would work more effectively in an environment where you belong and are valued, rather than the opposite. This is the heart of what workplace inclusion is. You see this reflected in the mission of the Inclusion Commission, to foster a workplace culture of inclusion at the City of Port Orchard through education, promotions, and activities. This mission has been shouldered by a volunteer group of employees who are passionate about this purpose. It was formed in 2023 by City Council resolution. So beyond my anecdotal portrayal of why inclusion is important, what does the research say? Why is this such an important topic that it is worth employees with full plates dedicating their time toward? Here are just a few. Reduced risk of lawsuits. You're likely very familiar with employee anti-harassment and anti-discrimination trainings, which are often provided with an eye toward reducing the risk of discrimination or harassment lawsuits. Inclusion goes beyond the avoidance of discrimination and harassment to the addition of feeling welcome at work as a whole person, exactly who you are. It logically follows that when this is the culture, attitude, and focus of a workplace, there will be a reduced risk of harassment or discrimination, which arise from a lack of respect or understanding of our differences. Improve reputation. Much of my work at City of Port Orchard is in recruitment, and I can tell you that in our post-pandemic world, prospective employees are being thoughtful about where they choose to come to work. I hear job candidates ask questions in interviews about the workplace culture of the city, and I encourage hiring managers to consider what a job candidate may add to the workplace culture of the city if hired. To continue to employ high-quality candidates, the city needs to earn and maintain a reputation as an employer of choice. Furthermore, as you know, the citizens of Port Orchard are watching the city employees and its council members at all times. What do our decisions say about our priorities? Are we as a city communicating what we intend? Do we have room to grow in how we are currently perceived versus how we wish to be perceived? Improve productivity and innovation. As a workplace culture of inclusivity is fostered and City of Port Orchard's reputation as such grows, we will find ourselves attracting high-quality employees from a wide variety of backgrounds. Gathering employees with different perspectives and specialties together means that our workplace will increase in diversity, which is linked to several positive outcomes, including increases in productivity and increases in innovation. This supports the city's goals and aims as we strive to better serve the citizens of Port Orchard. Increase employee retention and support employee mental health. Feeling welcomed and valued at work can reduce stress on your employees, improve mental health, promote employee engagement, and increase longevity at the city. Keeping employees working, healthy, and happy also means lowered costs. Fewer resources go to recruitment and onboarding new employees. We help keep healthcare costs down, and we get higher quality work products. So let's say you now understand what inclusion is and the positive impacts it can have, as well as how it can benefit the city. But even after defined, inclusion is a vague term. How do we know if we're an inclusive workplace? How do we become more inclusive? How can we identify areas we have to grow, and how do we get there? These are really big and important questions, and I wish I could say there's a clear one-size-fits-all roadmap with a set number of simple steps we can check off a list. But workplace culture is very complex, and while there are a multitude of resources and experts available, it takes work to sift through and evaluate which ones are effective, as well as a good choice for the city. Inclusion Commission members are not experts, but we believe the work is important, and so we as employees have taken the time to delve into some of these resources and develop a plan and strategy for moving forward. To explain those in more detail, I'm going to turn this presentation over to a few of my fellow Inclusion Commission members, starting with Heather Humphrey.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, chief, directors, and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Heather Humphrey, and I'm a police services specialist who had the privilege of serving as the chair for the Inclusion Commission last year, and I still continue to participate this year. To go over our goals, I'd briefly like to share with you our goals that we've established to guide our work in fostering a more inclusive and equitable environment for city employees. Goal number 1 is to establish a culture of belonging where employees are feeling welcomed and supported. This is the foundation of our work. We believe that when individuals feel that they truly belong, they are more engaged, productive, and committed to public service. Goal number 2 challenges city managers, directors, and leaders to move from awareness to competency in manners of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is not enough to simply understand these concepts. Our leaders must be equipped to integrate inclusion principles in their decision-making and daily operations. Goal number 3, to increase the city knowledge about diversity, equity, and inclusion. This means ongoing education and training opportunities that are meaningful, accessible, and applicable to the realities of the workforce. Goal number 4 focuses on understanding and advocating for the diverse needs of our employees. Every employee brings a unique background and perspective, and it is essential that we recognize those differences to ensure that everyone has the support that they need to succeed. These goals are not only just aspirational, they're intentionable, actionable, and measurable. And they are designed to create real and lasting change within our organization. We're proud of the progress that we've made so far and continue to committed to continuing this important work with you. Thank you for your time. And now I'd like to introduce Debbie Lund, our Human Resources Director, who will highlight the past accomplishments of our group.
Good evening again. Thank you, Heather. I want to cover some of the things that the Commission worked on in 2024. In addition to being your Human Resources Director, according to the resolution, I am the coordinator for the Employee Inclusion Commission. So in 2024, we asked for volunteer employees to come and meet with us and join us in these efforts. We've had monthly meetings. We have a core group of 6 to 8 employees who take time out of their busy schedules to join us each month for those meetings. We have 4 to 6 more employees that join us as they can, as schedules and workloads allow. We have had interest from all departments on the commission, or at least to be kind of on the mailing list to receive those updates. In accordance with the goals for education, the commission needed to educate ourselves, right? The process here is a journey. We have a lot to learn, and we're still learning. We attended some webinars together. We've done lots of literature review. We've had numerous conversations about unconscious bias and women's history. And some of these topics, you'll see why we chose them when I get into our future slide. I'm gonna hold the punchline here. On the next slide, Janine, if you would. We've also expanded those learning opportunities to all employees. We wanted to share with them information about various things they might not have been aware of: Rosa Parks Day, World Autism Day, Mental Health Awareness, Pride Day, it's Pride Month, by the way, the month of June, Suicide Prevention Month, disabilities, and various religious holidays. There's a very long list when you go out there and look. We've shared training with the management team on unconscious bias again, and just in general on promoting workplace belonging. We also held kind of a social event, a cultural foods event, and invited employees to cook and bring in food for a lunch, either from family traditions or heritage or whatever they chose to contribute, for just a fun event. On the next slide, Janine. Our biggest project for 2024, though, was our survey. So first and foremost, I want to thank the council for allowing us to budget for that employee survey. We went out with an RFP and chose a consultant out of the East Coast, actually. Evolve Market Research was the consultant. They produced a survey with our input. In May of 2024, we surveyed then 103 city employees, and for anybody who's worked on a survey, you're jumping and celebrating if you get maybe 30% response rate. We had an amazing 84.5% response rate, so just a tremendous response from our city employees, which we're very thankful for. So what did the survey tell us? Nearly 91% rated their relationship with their colleagues and supervisors as very good or excellent, which was great news. 84% satisfaction with their jobs, 81% felt valued, 65% felt as though they belonged, 61% indicated a high level of inclusion in the workplace. So all some great numbers there. And more people said they would recommend working for the city than those who said they would not. But of course, there was some additional news, some takeaways. You're fine, Janine. It's jumping all around on her. I will scoot to my notes. There were opportunities for us that we learned in that survey as well. The interesting part, one of the many interesting parts, is statistically, our survey results did not vary based on gender, religion, disability, ethnicity. Our survey results varied on which department here at the city you worked in. So that was a key takeaway for the commission. Communication across the departments, interdepartmental, was rated lower than communication within that employee's own department. And survey results employees felt like they lacked common cohesive mission. You have your guiding principles that are posted there. Perhaps the employees are telling us they would like something similar. Employees with a disability, and we had about 18% of our city employees self-report as having a disability. They felt less emotionally supported or satisfied or sense of belonging here at the city. So that's something for us to keep our eye on as well. And 30% of employees did not feel as though they could express their true feelings at work. And that's a term called psychological safety that we're also taking a look at. Additionally, and another big takeaway for the commission, stress is a concern. About over a third of the employees reported feeling very high or very high levels of stress, most often tied to workload. We're a little busy around here. Stress has led to burnout. 44% witnessed or experienced burnout. And employees that have considered going to work elsewhere, that's 40%. That would be an amazing loss for the city. Only 56% of employees feel emotionally supported at work. Less than half feel comfortable discussing their mental health with their supervisor or with human resources. And female employees are more stressed and feel less valued than their male counterparts. You saw earlier we spent some time at the Commission on Women's History, and that was a primary driver for that. So what did we do with these results? We shared them with all employees, right? You take a survey, you never hear about those results. We did not want to be that kind of survey. We shared this information with all employees. The Inclusion Commission provided management, human resources, and our wellness committee a list of suggestions as a basis that came out of this survey. Department directors were asked to dig into their own department results and create a related goal for themselves and their department for 2025. We requested, and again, thank you for your approval and authorization to repeat this survey in 2026. We want to know if we've moved this needle at all. And the survey results were used to guide our work plan for 2025. And at this point, I will turn things over to our 2025 chair, Deputy Chief Alan Iwashta.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, city staff, and union members. For those of you unfamiliar, my name is Alan Iwashta. I am the Deputy Chief at the Police Department here and have been gratefully selected to be the 2025 chair for the Inclusion Commission. So the Inclusion Commission, as my colleagues have already spoken about, we've covered the inception of the Inclusion Commission, covered some of the goals and achievements that have been worked towards over the past year or so. And I'll be focused on where we're going, where we hope to go. And in moving forward, in efforts to achieve the goals that we've identified, there were two real themes that we identified, improving communication and fostering psychological safety, of which I'll speak to. And we've identified also the sustainability, as it's important for any of these types of efforts or initiatives to continue. So starting with communication, communicate. So as mentioned by my colleagues, several key areas of improvement were identified by the survey, focused on communication and psychological safety. The Inclusion Commission acts as a hub and is positioned well to facilitate and institute meaningful change within the organization and our organizational culture. It provides a forum to share and identify communication goals, or communication gaps, and promote connection. The Inclusion Commission will strive to improve cross-departmental communication and improve clarity around the city's overarching mission, vision, and values, within the context of our unique employee culture. We're not alone. These are challenges that are facing all organizations across the nation. A significant portion of our employees indicated high levels of stress tied to workload, with many reporting burnout, perceived low emotional support, and a discomfort in discussing mental health and disability challenges they may be facing. But again, we are not alone, and studies have historically shown that the percentages with which the survey has indicated for us, they're consistent across all types of work environments and organizations. So closing the gap, the survey revealed several areas of improvement. And again, to reiterate, employees with disabilities and female staff reported feeling less valued, less emotionally supported, and increased levels of stress. The Inclusion Commission has already initiated efforts to help improve in these key areas. We will be releasing a new or inaugural employee newsletter to update and keep city staff informed on our progress and identified needs, and also provide open lines of communication with them. We've had recognition events, and we continue to plan other events to hopefully foster a more communicative environment. One of those is, I don't know if you may have seen the little green ducks floating around, but department heads were asked, we provided them with a little green duck. We encourage department heads to engage, and supervisors to engage in conversations with their staff on issues not related necessarily to work, to focus on them as human beings and individuals, to help hopefully bridge that gap. So am I safe? So psychological safety is kind of a buzzword, and I wanted to be able to explain just so that we're all pulling from the same context. So psychological safety is a term that was coined by a Harvard professor, Dr. Amy Edmondson, in the 90s. And it essentially is psychological safety is feeling safe to take interpersonal risks, speak up, disagree openly, and surface concerns without fear of negative repercussions. And so a litmus test for any individual, and you can ask yourself these questions yourself, as to whether or not you are experiencing either good psychological safety or potentially a lack of. If you ask yourself, if you make a mistake on a team, will it be held against you? Are you concerned about bringing up problems and tough issues because you fear ridicule? Are members of your team ostracized for being or thinking differently? Is it difficult to ask other members on your team for help? If you answered yes to these questions, you may be in an environment that is on the lower end of offering psychological safety. So why do we encourage psychological safety? So there have been numerous studies conducted over the years that have identified psychological safety as a #1 common denominator for highly effective teams. It results in a reduction in burnout, increased retention rate, and a reduction in stress. And as you've heard my colleagues mention before, those were items that were expressed during our survey with our personnel. So how will we achieve this? Human behavior doesn't change due to a single training program or initiative. Behavior change succeeds when there's a clear goal and a comprehensive strategy for achieving it. Skill development centered around capabilities that not only support the larger goal, but also apply to people's day-to-day work is essential. So the Inclusion Commission is actively working to help identify and build mechanisms to support this development and day-to-day skills within our employees and leadership staff. So again, one of the conversational pieces of Green Ducky not only encourages conversation, but it's also an effective tool in hopefully creating a sense of psychological safety as well. We've also identified additional training on psychological safety through our EAP program that will be offered to all employees organization-wide. Finally, to close, I'll talk a little bit about sustainability. So the Inclusion Commission identified sustainability as a critical goal. We are not virtue signaling, but effectuating lasting change for the organization. And you may have heard this phrase before, culture eats policy for breakfast. Cultural transformation requires consistent embedded practices, not one-off events. The Inclusion Commission is helping to shape these through a strategic, employee-centered, and data-informed approach. As you've already heard, we've initiated a survey to identify current and future goals and hope to execute a follow-up survey in the near future to help identify new areas for improvement and further crystallize our mission. How will we make it stick? The Inclusion Commission will strive to make informed, data-driven decisions, identifying opportunities to improve awareness and increase our overall competency in this area, in these areas, I should say. In summary, the Inclusion Commission is not, In summary, the Inclusion Commission is working to actively shape the city's evolving internal structure. Our hope is to act as a connector, advocate, and guide, leveraging both employee input and leadership engagement to build a more communicative, psychologically safe, and inclusive organization. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank the commission for the work you're doing to improve the culture of our city. I value the work you guys are doing. We want to make sure that we have a welcoming workplace, and I know that work you're doing is working towards that. So thank you for your work you're doing. Any questions from the council? Councilmember Diener?
I just like to second what the mayor had to say. I think it's pretty impressive. We've asked for a presentation to DCD up at the county a long time ago, and I thought that was great. I love to see the progress that's been made since then. A couple of the earlier slides actually mentioned goals and strategies, and it was followed by a slide that measured, measurable outcomes. And I'm just curious, what have you shown? What have you measured so far? Or is this really kind of the baseline that we're setting with this survey today?
Yeah, that May 2024 survey was the baseline, and we won't measure per se anything again until we resurvey, which we're hoping to do in January of 26. It's not going to necessarily be apples to apples, right? We have a lot of new employees. We surveyed when City Hall was in disarray from construction, when we were doing a big change in organization out at the shop, but you need something. So very much looking forward to seeing what those results say.
Okay, so are we, I think.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. A lot of great information unpacked there. I don't remember seeing it. Maybe I missed it. Was that survey shared with council?
Very good question. We might not have done that. If council is interested in seeing that, we'd be happy to provide that.
I don't speak for the rest of them. I know I would. So I would love to see that result, because it felt, based off of the presentation, that was much more of an employee satisfaction survey, more so than an inclusion survey. And so I have tons of experience and just would love to see some of the nuanced details in that. And then two, I just want to bring up that I hope it's a priority. I know that there's some folks that come and go. I would hope that it was made clear to their manager that this is something that we make time for. That just seemed like for the number of employees we have for the city, we should be able to get people to a meeting of that nature if we're going to make that super important. And then when we talk about these things in my past, right, you have four, what I think, great, were they mission goals or just goals? Could we in the future see strategies and then how we're measuring each one of those moving forward? I just want to make sure that if we're investing in this, we're getting everything that we can out of it.
Yeah, and we do have that document. Beth has done a great job in leading us in that effort with goals, strategies, objectives, tasks, I think is the structure. For me, we ended up spending so much meeting time in that detail, I felt like we were starting to lose the bigger picture. So we kind of regrouped in January of this year and just simplified it. I mean, we all do this in our quote-unquote spare time, of which you saw the survey results. We have none. And so that's where, as Alan presented, we're just like, let's focus on communication, let's focus on stress and psychological safety.
That's awesome. You know, I think when you allow these cross-collaborative opportunities, you find efficiencies, and maybe we'll have more ability to do that. So thank you for the improvement at the city.
Councilmember Chang, go ahead.
The only thing I would add on to what John said, he stole most of my thunder, is I was impressed. The findings are actually very interesting, but I was also wondering if there was a free-form section of the survey, for example, when they're saying that communication across departments was ranked lower than inside a department. You would sort of expect that. So I was wondering what were the survey respondents expecting, and I was really encouraged that Alan said you guys are doing a newsletter. I mean, that sounds like the first solution. So I think I would be open to hearing more suggestions, like what they'd like to see more of or hear more of. And I hope you invite council to the culture potlucks. That sounds like fun.
Yes, that's a definitely.
There was a free, just so you know, there was a free form feature, but we were not privy to those responses. The consultants kept that data and summarized them, again, protecting employee confidentiality, right? Because this survey was 100% anonymous. The consultants knew who responded, we did not. So they did have some areas where they were, but you know, anecdotally, those at the table, right, are talking about it. A perfect example that came up at the last meeting was we kind of all looked out the window and said, what is it we're building down there and what does it do, right? There's a number of staff that don't know. And so just things like that, right?
Do they want an intranet of their own so they can communicate amongst themselves?
I'm not sure if that's come up. Director Crocker runs IT. I don't know if that has been a conversation.
We've talked about an internal internet. It's just.
Yeah, it's one of those projects, but that been on the list for a few years now.
Teams Chat does that.
Remember, everything though we do in our world is public record though too.
Yes.
Councilmember Rose Pepe.
Thank you, Debbie, for leading this effort, but I know it's a team effort. I would say a couple things. One, 80-some% return is huge. I mean, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with the second survey, because people will feel whether they were included or not, or heard. So that'll be awesome. I can honestly say, as the city becomes transformational, Mayor, as we've grown, it's the right time to do this, and I'll be very interested to see what cross-pollination there is between departments. I know in a previous life we had to have mechanics go out on the buses to schools because, quite frankly, they didn't see what the end result of their work was at the end of the day. All they knew was they fixed a bus. They didn't see that it picked up kids. And that, you know, and it sounds so simple, but it's not. And yet we have a department that is out at the
industrial park.
Industrial
We've
park.
got them across the street here,
yeah,
across the
so,
street there.
Yeah, it's very awesome. So thank you, Beth and Ellen, Ms. Humphrey. Thank you very much. I appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Member Trenary, go ahead.
I'll just keep it brief. Thank you for the information and the presentation, and I look forward to, and I hope the rest of the council does, being on that newsletter list so that we can receive those as well.
Councilmember Benton, go ahead.
Yeah, I just like the way you guys are all working together and communicating and trying to really, you know, make everyone feel value. And that's what I really got out of this, that how you're working with each other.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Debbie, and all of you. I appreciate you a great deal. All right, we're going to finally get to our business items. And so first is item A, adoption of an ordinance approving the 2025 comprehensive plan update. Mr. Bond, this is you.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Before the City Council tonight is an ordinance adopting the 2025 comprehensive plan amendments. This ordinance has the recommendation of 6 out of 6 planning commissioners as considered at the June 3rd, 2025 Planning Commission meeting after closing a public hearing. The amendments recommended for approval include a city and private individual initiated amendment to the capital facilities element to fix a transposition error on cost estimates for 2 projects, a city initiated amendment to the transportation improvement program, a private individual initiated amendment to the comprehensive plan to change a land use designation on properties near Old Clifton Road from industrial to commercial with a zoning map amendment from light industrial to residential 3. The map amendment was the only proposed amendment for which the city received public testimony. Today, Councilmember Chang emailed us asking about this testimony, and we did email out the letters that the Planning Commission had received. The public comments generally were concerned with the impacts of development, not necessarily stating unequivocally whether they wanted industrial or residential, and so we tried to explain that the development impacts get evaluated at the time of development, not at the time that we're just considering applying the land use designation. So I did want to also note that the Planning Commission started this meeting at its May 6th meeting, its May 6th Planning Commission meeting. They started the hearing, that is, and then because of the amount of testimony received, they chose to keep the record open so that people could submit written comments after the fact and also come back and testify again at the June meeting before they closed the hearing. So there were a few other amendments on the 2025 docket. These were withdrawn prior to consideration before the Planning Commission, and staff recommends approval of an ordinance adopting the 2025 comprehensive plan amendments as presented.
Councilmember Trenary.
Yeah, Mayor, I move to approve the 2025 comprehensive plan amendments as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Trenary, a second by Councilmember Morrissey. Questions of Mr. Bond? This is our annual process. Go ahead.
I just have a comment. I want to thank Nick and Jim for sending out the commentary. In reading the report, I was a little concerned that there were so many people showing up at the Planning Commission meetings, and I just wanted to get a flavor for what their testimony was. The 3 documents that you sent actually, I think, it reassured me that their issues are being answered. There was one, I guess, from Mr. Palmer that helped address a lot of the issues that came up, So I feel comfortable with the comprehensive plans as presented.
Comments, questions? All right, you'll be voting on the adoption of an ordinance approving the 2025 comprehensive plan update. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the ordinance is approved. We're to item B, adoption of an ordinance approving the updated commute trip reduction plan. Mr. Bond, this is you.
Yes, the City Council is asked to approve an ordinance that adopts the City of Port Orchard's updated commute trip reduction plan. The CTR plan has been revised and prepared by Kitsap Transit in accordance with the requirements of the Washington Clean Air Act, codified in RCW 7094-521 through 7094-551. Adoption of this ordinance will replace the existing plan adopted in 2008 and ensure that the city remains in compliance with the current state law and regional transportation goals. The City of Port Orchard originally adopted a CTR plan in 1999 through Ordinance 1760. In 2008, the city updated the plan through Ordinance number 14-08, which amended Port Orchard Municipal Code Section 10.86.030 and incorporated the plan as an Attachment A. As a participant in the 1997 interlocal agreement with Kitsap Transit and other jurisdictions within Kitsap County, the city relies on Kitsap Transit to update and coordinate the CTR plans on behalf of all partner jurisdictions. Kitsap Transit has now completed an update to the CTR plan for 2025 to reflect current commute conditions, employer practices, and strategies for trip reduction. The proposed ordinance formally adopts this updated CTR plan to replace the existing Attachment A with the 2025 version. The updated plan outlines the city's responsibilities and strategies for reducing single occupancy vehicle commutes as an employer and supports multimodal travel, telework, and flexible scheduling. The plan also ensures that the city remains eligible for state assistance and fulfills regional obligations under the Growth Management Act and Clean Air Act mandates. Staff recommendation is to adopt an ordinance to approve the updated commute reduction plan as prepared by Kitsap Transit and maintain compliance with state law.
Councilmember Morrissey.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance adopting the commute trip reduction plan as presented.
Second.
Morrissey, a second by Councilmember Diener. Have any questions for Mr. Bond? I know we've been issuing transit passes to some folks as part of this program because we have a parking problem, if you haven't heard, and we're trying to get fewer employees to bring their cars to work. So, we've been a big effort associated with that initiative.
So, yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I was just actually in a conversation with another council member earlier because this is more than just what Ms. Lund talked with us last month about, correct, Mr. Bond? That was city-specific when Ms. Lund came and talked about this, and this is a plan more broadly for the entire city.
Correct, and this is pursuant to the interlocal agreement, and it's to comply with the state mandate.
Okay. And the substantial changes to the agreement, were there anything?
I really couldn't speak to the changes in great detail. You know, we weren't the author of this. It was Kitsap Transit who prepared it, and sorry, I don't have a summary of that at my fingertips.
Who from the city would have input in this or your plan that we're about to adopt on behalf of the city?
I'm not sure if Ms. Lund had any input on this, but I know that Jim Fisk worked with Kitsap Transit as part of this to basically review and comply, you know, make sure that this is complying with all of our state mandates.
I think I can add one thing that might help, because I have talked to Jim Fisk about it. As I think I mentioned last time here, we took this pay trip reduction and said, city as an employer, HR will handle, as a jurisdiction is really more of a planner function. I believe the substantial updates were to the goals. As I recall, the state has increasing levels of more and more people off the road as the years go by. And I suspect that's what drove the need for this particular change.
That makes sense. Other questions?
Yeah, hello?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, so this was approved by the Kitsap Transit Board, is that correct?
This is not, Kitsap Transit Board has not, I don't believe. We did, it's nothing that comes to recent memory. I think this is they're the kind of the governing agent of this in its state law, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the Washington Clean Air Act, and then there's also regional policies that this helps implement. But yeah, it's a state law that requires that this be done. I don't know what involvement the board has, but I know that this is prepared for all of the jurisdictions in Kitsap County in coordination with them. But Kitsap Transit is the one who actually puts the plan together.
Correct. So I was kind of confused because John asked who basically approved it from Kitsap County or from Kitsap Transit, and we have multiple board members sitting here tonight on the transit board. So I thought that that was approved by the mayor and council member Rosepepe, but maybe not.
It's nothing we've seen recently that comes to mind. I know that they're the ones with the expertise in this and are drafting these documents on behalf of the other agencies that participate in this. I think we all have to participate in it by state law and the Clean Air Act.
So this is just a formality.
Yeah, complying with state law.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Chang.
Yeah, another formality is this plan involves other agencies such as WashDOT.
Yeah, I see that.
WashDOT is contributing funds. I have nothing to do with that. I don't benefit from it, but I will recuse myself if anyone feels I need to.
Wish Mr. Councilmember Chang to recuse himself from voting on this?
Not so lucky.
He's not so lucky.
Yeah, no, I mean, WashDOT puts the most money into it, right, in this plan.
All right, you'll be voting on an ordinance approving the updated commute trip reduction plan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the updated plan has been approved. We're to our last business item, which is also Mr. Bond. approval of a memorandum of agreement between the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the State Historic Preservation Office, Recreation and Conservation Office, Washington Trust for Historic Preservation, and the City of Port Orchard for the city's Community Event Center and Waterfront Plaza project. Mr. Bond.
Yes. The City Council is asked to adopt an MOA related to the Community Event Center project and the associated Waterfront Plaza and Restoration project. The city is required to obtain permits from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in order to construct the in-water portions of the project, including a new seawall or overwater structure and restoration project. The city has applied for these permits as part of its completing its Section 6 review under the National Historic Preservation Act. This review is required because the existing Kitsap Bank building is now more than 50 years old. Adoption of the proposed MOA allows for the U.S. Army Corps to sign off on the permit under the Section 6 Cultural Resources Review. In the MOA, the city agrees to the following actions. The city will ensure that archaeological monitoring and that an inadvertent discovery plan for the project is followed, and this is already a condition of approval under our SEPA decision, which was issued in 2019 for the project. The city will provide educational signage, including 4 interpretive panels along the waterfront. 3 of these are already required because we said we would do that as part of our RCO grant that we applied for and received $500,000 towards the project to complete. The city will provide an interpretive panel inside the Community Event Center, highlighting the past use of the site as the Kitsap Bank building, and will highlight how the bank materials have been reused in the new building. We're planning on using the timbers from the old building on the stair treads, and so we want to highlight the adaptive reuse, and so it's really the cost of designing and installing a sign inside the building. The city will then share documentation of all expenditures related to the interpretive panels for use as match for the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation. By providing us our receipts, they're able to report on that and show that as how the program is being implemented. And then finally, we have an obligation to provide annual updates to all of the parties until the project is completed. So all in all, it's not a terribly costly agreement. It's one additional exterior sign, one additional interior sign, and the staff recommendation is approval of the MOA for the Community Event Center and Waterfront Plaza as presented.
Councilmember Chang.
I move to approve an memorandum of agreement between the City of Port Orchard, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the State Historic Preservation Office, Recreation Conservation Office, and Washington Trust for Historic Preservation as presented.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Chang and a second by Councilmember Fenton. So questions? So this is one of the conditions for us to get our permit from the Army Corps Engineer, correct, Mr. Bond?
Yes, that is correct.
I am personally very encouraged by this, especially 2B when it talks about the reuse of materials in the bank building. I think that's a really nice effort. I'd say about maybe 100, 200 years ago, they probably would have rolled the bank building somewhere else. We don't do that anymore, but it's at least nice that we're recycling materials from the existing building.
It was already in our plan to do that. It's just we've got to call it out. Councilmember Morrissey?
Yes, Director Bond, this was part of the presentation we had at Finance Committee, yes?
Yes, it was mentioned in the committee.
Okay, so this is the $10,000 sign.
Well, it's hiring, we have to have an interpretive specialist to help us prepare the content, which we would have had to design signs anyway, whether that's our landscape architect or the interpretive specialist. And then it is purchasing 2 signs in addition to the 3 that we already committed to in our grant agreement.
And the funding source, the people who are requiring this are the funders, so they're funding their own sign. I guess I want to make sure that I'm not authorizing general fund dollars for a $10,000 sign and that it's coming from somebody else's money.
Well, the sign is an eligible expense under the RCO grant.
It's eligible or ineligible? Sorry.
It's eligible.
Okay.
It's also eligible under our Kitsap Public Facilities District money, so the sign that's in the building is part of the building design, so that can be, we can use public facility district money to pay for that. And then park impact fees are a large portion of both projects in terms of our match, so that's going to go towards the project. And if there's, we're going to bid this, we don't know what it's going to cost yet, and so how the council chooses to fund any remaining portion of the project is up to the city council. Hopefully one of our representatives will come through with some money for us.
Okay. So, and then specifically which entity, because we're in an MOA with multiple entities here, is requiring as their piece with the interpreter
It's the U.S. Army Corps of
Language.
Engineers, but they're required to consult with these other organizations. One of the organizations is RCO, who is funding the Plaza grant. So they're concurring with what the Corps of Engineers is asking for, and we had a series of collaborative meetings where they said, I think, you know, we want to highlight the traditional Northwest maritime architecture of the existing bank building, and each person sort of said, this is what's important to my organization, and they came to an agreement that this would be a suitable way to proceed.
Okay.
Is it 10 grand for the design or 10,000 for to have someone build it, create it?
Well, the signs it's probably going to be 10 grand for hiring an interpretive specialist and the cost of 2 additional signs, because these are not terribly complex or expensive signs.
Correct.
Until we go out to bid, I don't know what the actual sign cost is going to be, and we're waiting for a scope of work from an interpretive specialist to do the content, any illustrations, and the graphic design work. So we're not expecting this to cost more than $10,000. Maybe it goes up to 12, but it's in that neighborhood.
So we're just allotting money to start the project, but not to okay the actual contract to do it.
This is a requirement to get our
Correct.
permit, and at some point, we're going to need to approve a contract to do this work. You are absolutely correct.
Right, all right, thank you.
And again, I'm going to vote for it. I just want clarity on which of those entities makes that requirement for the interpretive specialist.
Yeah, it's coming from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers under the authority of the National Historic Preservation Act.
Okay, so the Army Corps is my answer in the future. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Fenton?
Oh, when it says, I was just wondering who are the parties, and maybe you said it with the engineer, but the city will provide an annual update to parties to the agreement until this project is completed.
All
Bottom
the
of
parties
page-
that are listed in this agreement.
Okay, all those are the parties.
Bottom of
Okay.
page 171.
Yes, okay.
All right, any further questions? You'll be voting on a memorandum of agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers and many other parties and the city of Port Orchard related to the community center and the waterfront plaza. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the memorandum is approved. We've got a discussion item, and we're going to need to hustle because we've got about 20 minutes left in our time this evening. So Mr. Bond asked that we add a discussion item related to transportation impact fees, and the reason this got important is the consultant, the employee at the consulting firm is leaving as of Friday, so we want to be able to get this somewhat wrapped up if we can with the direction that you gave us the other night. So, Mr. Bond?
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor, and yes, I apologize for the late addition to the agenda, but I think this will save us a lot of time in the long run. If you'll recall, when we discussed this at our, I believe it was a work study meeting, we talked about 3 alternatives that the consultant provided. There was an alternative A, B, and C that each had a different per trip fee proposed between $7,000 and $10,000 per peak PM trip. Council requested, after some discussion, that we meet in the middle between the amounts in alternatives A and B. And in order to adjust the fee, we either need to add projects or take away projects. And so we've been working on that over the last week and a half. So alternative B, as provided by the consultant, included all the projects from alternative A plus 12 additional projects. And the total cost to come from impact fees under the growth share was $60 million for alternative A and $77 million for alternative B. And so to meet in the middle, we essentially need to add about $8.3 million in total project cost to the alternative. So we put together a survey that we sent to each council member asking you to rank these projects, the 12 projects that are the difference between A and B, in order from highest priority to lowest priority. And there were 7 projects that were sort of above the midway point between the 2 alternatives. All of these but one are generally located along Bay Street or in the downtown, and so it seemed that the downtown area, Bay Street from Mile Hill all the way through downtown and then back up Port Orchard Boulevard, all of those projects are included. But the design project for Sedgwick Road West, that was ranked number 6. That is to at least get a design and right-of-way plan for that stretch between Sydney in front of Lowe's over to Highway 16 where we have a lot of backups. So those projects are all come to $6.6 million, and so that's below the midway point between alternative A and B in terms of picking projects. When you get to projects that were ranked 8 through 12, Project 8 is the biggest project in that list, and so that would take us well over the midway point between alternative A and B if we were to add that. And these projects, for the most part, are not in downtown Port Orchard, with the exception of a roundabout at the bottom of Port Orchard Boulevard. That one didn't rank quite as high. And so I've put together a couple of different ways that you could choose to proceed, and if I can get guidance from the City Council tonight, I will have our consultant put together the final report, hopefully before this key employee leaves the company on Friday. So if you just went with alternative A, projects 1 through 7, that's going to be closer to alternative A than to alternative B in terms of the per trip cost, with $6.6 million in cost being added. While Project 8 is I arranged these in order of lowest fee to highest fee, and so Project 8 is really expensive, but we could do 1 through 7 and then add 10 and 11 and still be below the midway point. The third alternative I put together would be the projects ranked 1 through 7 plus Project 9, which is a more costly project, and I'll go back and show you that 9 is the Salmonberry widening project where we have flooding near Bethel where the culvert is collapsed. Projects 10 is the roundabout at Port Orchard Boulevard and Bay Street, and Project 11 is the Sedgwick West construction there in front of the Lowe's. And then the fourth alternative would be the most expensive, and that would just be to do the 8 highest ranked projects, but that's going to take you past the midway point in between alternative A and B and be the most costly. And so if there's any consensus from the council, we can try to get a preferred alternative report put together and then bring that back to you in July for adoption.
Is it important to hit the middle, or is it more important to get the right projects? I don't know that we were looking for a number or trying to get to a middle. Go ahead, Councilmember Rose Pepe.
I think with 7 people, we'd probably have 7 different ideas. I think what's important to me is that the projects that we pick, that we can do them, both financially and in our planning. So that's what's important to me, is that, we don't try to collect money that we can't spend, because I was certainly in favor of the whole enchilada, when we can't spend it in that way. So, I'm looking, when I look at this, I'm looking at, I'd like to go with the ones that probably are the most needed. So I was looking at, unfortunately, probably the most, alternative A plus the projects 1 through 8 for me. That's me.
So you're number 4.
Yep, number 4.
I'll go next. I'm number 2.
Nick, can you show me that list show us that list of
Yeah.
rankings again, please?
So 8 is the Bethel-Sedgwick corridor, and I meant to say this, but part of the reason that this hasn't been on the list in the past is because it is a state highway, and so the previous council had always said, well, we want the state to take care of that. I think it's unlikely that the state does anything real soon on Sedgwick. Maybe we can get the interchange done, but probably not Sedgwick. And so if we have skin in the game, maybe we're more likely to get coordination with the state if that were to be added. Project 9 is that collapsed culvert on Salmonberry where we don't have any sidewalks, and that's sort of connecting that neighborhood to the new roundabout at Bethel. Project 10 is the bottom of Bay Street and Port Orchard Boulevard, a new roundabout. Project 11 was the Sedgwick Road West construction in front of Lowe's, and then Project 12 was the Old Clifton Figley Road roundabout, which we've talked about before, that if a school happens, that's when that roundabout's going to be needed. You could always add that project to the list later should a school bond pass, but until then, I think that project is pretty low in terms of being warranted based on the volume of traffic.
I think I'm a 1. I don't think it would take much to twist my arm if we needed to get a consensus around 2, but I think I'm a 1.
Mr. Diener?
I'm comfortable with number 2.
You're number 2.
And we're going on what project we want. So that's the.
Well, you guys already ranked them.
right
And they
Yes.
gave you alternatives in groups.
Yeah, I'm a number 2.
Okay.
So. Sorry, my eyes can't see and I'm looking at this. I didn't know we had to vote tonight.
Well, we're not voting tonight. We're
We're
just
not voting, but we're telling our preference.
Giving direction.
Mayor, I'll go to 2.
made it bigger for you.
I'll go to 2.
Oh.
I think that,
We've got 5 people indicating that 2 is the path, and we'll get the
okay with
consultant
that.
to work, and then we'll bring it back to you guys for consideration.
Yeah, I want the pathway too.
don't change your mind.
No, I have a tangential question if I can
Okay.
ask it. These rates are for both single-family dwellings and apartment units, or just what?
It's for trips, so any project that generates traffic and its new development is going to pay an impact fee based on how many trips they generate. And so the report will actually spit out a number that is somewhere between the alternative A and alternative B on slide 2. So the alternative A was $7,044 per trip. Alternative B was $8,900. So presumably we're going to end up right around $8,000 if we're
In the
at
middle.
that midway point in terms of how many projects we add.
And where are we currently?
We're, I think, 6,400, 6,300.
Okay. Going to 1,500. Okay, all right. Comfortable with that? Okay, bring it back. Let's get to our council committees. Economic development, you met
Yesterday.
Yesterday, that's, I knew it was recently.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We met yesterday. We had a presentation from staff around our Bay Street project and talking around options for timing, funding, what a, words are not my friend tonight, alternative route, detour, thank you. That's the word I'm looking for, would look like for our Bay Street project. That's still in flux. The mayor did share, I'm probably stealing some of his mayor's report thunder.
Go ahead.
But he got $3 million from the federal government for that project as well. So we had asked for $3 million from the state during this budgeting session, and we got $1 million. Lucky. We are fortunate to have been able to been picked by the federal government for that funding as well. We talked about our pre-op meetings. There's a storage facility at the end of Berry Lake in Sydney that had another pre-op meeting. And then somebody still looking at the former Sherry's over there, has some good activity going on over there. So hopefully that all comes to fruition. And then during our roundtable, we talked a couple of different things, including kind of a piggyback to the Bay Street project on a possible downtown shuttle. And then the Port Orchard Waterfront Alliance shared, that's the new name for our folks that was formerly POPSA, Port Orchard Bay Street Association, that they have a downtown beautification day scheduled for July 12th. So that is coming up. They've been doing great things. I would encourage anyone and everyone to come. And I thought I wrote it down here, but off the top of my head, I want to say it's the 14th was our next meeting. I didn't say, but it should be published somewhere.
Yes, July 14th.
Okay, thank you.
So for the cleanup on the 12th, who's coordinating that if you want to?
So her name's Sarah Butler. She's with the Port Orchard Waterfront Alliance. I'm happy to connect anybody who's looking for that. I also shared with them. I should, I'll get to coffee with council maybe at the end.
Is the mayor going to talk about the Kitsap Bank timeline? Because he mentioned that.
I've got a mayor's report.
Okay.
So,
concludes.
All right, and we're going to jump to utilities. Councilmember Rose.
I think we talked enough utilities tonight.
We did. Your meeting was largely what we saw in the presentation tonight. That is true. Finance gave a report, I believe, at our last council meeting.
Correct.
And transportation, I don't believe you guys have met since our last.
Nope.
Land use, have you met?
Did a report last time.
All right. Lodging tax is in hiatus. And supervisory, anything to report there?
No, the only thing that we did is we changed our meeting time to 3:30, and our next meeting is in September when we'll be talking budget.
Okay, on to the mayor's report. AWC conference is coming quickly. Every city gets 3 voting delegates. There's gonna be 4 of us there. So that's voting for the new board members. I'm the chair of the committee interviewing all those folks. So I would greatly appreciate it if you guys would allow me to be one of the voting delegates. But who of the 3 of you that is attending wants to be the other 2? Because we have to register.
Who's going? I'm going.
You're going, the 3 of you.
Does anyone not want to vote?
The business meeting at the end of the conference is when, you remember, you go in there.
I will give up my spot. The 3 of you can vote.
Wait a minute.
I asked, you didn't answer. Sorry, too slow.
You may not get the ice cream cone if you don't show up.
I'll find an ice cream cone.
They are good, though. Those ice cream cones.
Yeah. Okay. All right, that's handled. You're going to get an update on the Community Event Center from Rice Fergus Miller on July 15th. Something we brought up at Economic Development too is that semi-parking, and we're looking into that. In front of the hotel out there on Bravo Terrace is wanting us to change our code to maybe allow a couple of semis to park on the curb in front of the hotel. Public Works is diligently working on this to determine if the road's even wide enough to accommodate that, and that might come back. Maybe it'll come to land use in the future. I know Eric sent an email about Boo Bash with a bunch of information. He and I both have been working that with Sam. I don't think we need to add that as a work study item, if you concur, Eric. And we're working with Sam. They're rethinking that. I don't think they're going to close the road at all. They've got their expense for the candy. They're going to do the event. They just need to rethink how they're doing it, what they're doing it, and we'll work closely with Sam to make sure that's a success. John talked a little bit about the $3 million award from Senator Cantwell's office. Timing of that money, and it's tied to the federal budget, and what all that looks like is going to be our biggest challenge. We would love to take the money, but it might get too complicated, and I think the worst case scenario is if the money gets obligated, but it isn't meeting our timing requirements, that we possibly delay the road construction to 2027 when we build the community center. It's not ideal, but we'll have more clarity on this in the fall as we move forward. But exciting that we got this federal award, and we also got $1 million from the state. And
Mayor?
Fred, go ahead.
I'm sorry, if you back up for a second. There's always been this, who goes chicken and egg about
Yep, I'm
waiting.
going to go right there next.
Be quiet.
Okay, so Nick and I met with the bank on Friday. We're ready to go to we're going to be ready to go to construction in 2027. We'll have our updated cost estimates for the community center in November. And so all kinds of things are going to come together here as we're doing our mid-year review process. New cost estimates on things, whether or not the timing is going to work on this federal money. So there's going to be a lot of heavy decisions, in particular your finance committee will be working on to bring to the full council for consideration. But as far as the bank, they will, they're still struggling with COVID and what their work, what they need for space, okay? And if they had to pick today, it wouldn't be the 3-story building, it'd be a 2-story building. But does it make sense to build what you need today? Do you lease the other floor? So they're, I guess, contemplating things still. So they've assured me if we're ready to go in 2027, they need to move people out of that office space to other locations and to get out of our way. That's a definite possibility that happens. And then in that scenario, they trail us versus going up before us. So, Councilor Diener?
Are they thinking perhaps about live-work units above, or are they don't want to go there?
I don't know that apartments are really part of that mix. I think it's really going to be a Class A office building,
Okay.
professional
That's fair.
building.
And what's the latest on them, on their plans for, I know that you said they're kind of noodling around.
Their shoreline permit is married to ours, and so everybody's got to kind of they're gonna have to make some decisions before the end of the year.
Yeah,
What they're
okay.
going, where they're going. There's gonna be a lot decided by this fall and first of the year for sure.
Okay.
This is one of my favorite things to do. And he reminded me, Mr. Gerard at Marcus Whitman Middle School, he lived in the city at one point, and he called me 8 or 9 years ago he wrote me an email or something to complain about something. I don't even remember what it was. And I picked up the phone and called him, and we've just developed this relationship. And in years past, I've got a script that I do for a mock city council meeting that I've done in his classroom.
Right.
But he's got a leadership class, and last year I went to the classroom, and this year he brought the students here. They field trip to City Hall, and I spent about an hour with these students. It was a great experience. Some of it was serious in the beginning, and then all kinds of goofy questions about the mayor and what I do, and what my favorite band is, and all kinds of stuff. Good. I love interacting with youth. And something that kind of came out of that, and I'm doing one of the sessions about youth engagement at the AWSC conference, and we had a kind of a pre-working group with two of the other folks that are gonna, and these other two cities have a youth seat on their planning commission, and it's a voting member. It's a high school student, so just an idea. All right, and lastly, I got a letter today from the city of Gig Harbor. And no, they're not asking that we annex them. They're in Pierce County. We can't do that. But the letter says, Dear Mayor Patonsu, I would like to take this opportunity to formally recognize an invaluable asset provided by Chief Matt Brown of the Port Orchard Police Department. Chief Brown served as our mentor executive as the Port Orchard Police Department the Gig Harbor Police Department navigated the Washington State accreditation process. In his capacity, he guided us with exceptional skill and professionalism through the rigorous steps required to meet the program's high standards. His extensive knowledge of police administration and best practices was evident throughout the process. Chief Brown thoroughly challenged and validated our existing practices, offering insightful alternatives that enhance the way we operate. His contributions not only improved our department, but also further strengthened our already strong relationship between our two cities. Chief Brown is a credit to the city of Port Orchard. He plays a vital role in the regional law enforcement community. Please extend my sincere thanks and congratulations him for an exceptionally well done job. Thank you, Chief.
Good job.
Nicely done.
Mayor, if I might, about a year ago, I had the opportunity to speak to the Gig Harbor chief, and he had nothing but positive praise for our chief and the work that he's done. So I think that's just a continued attaboy for work well done for what you're doing, not only for our city but also within the police community. So thank you.
We're going to roll on to department head reports. Mr. Ryan, what you got?
Good evening again. So a couple big updates in the Foster pilot project. Big milestone Friday, we submitted our proposed mitigation plan. It is submitted with the State of Washington Department of Health, Department of Ecology, the Suquamish Tribe, and the Squaxin Island Tribe. It's been acknowledged, been received by all agencies, and we will start working on negotiations for MOU with the tribes. As it's reviewed, we'll have a preliminary meeting tentatively scheduled for the beginning of August to review our submitted materials with ecology. So that's on Foster. So moving forward. I wanted to bring up a thought and get consensus of doing voluntary water conservation efforts. As we grow and we have a very hot spring that we're already looking into. We started tapping into the Bremerton water again with the watering and the irrigation that's going on. So a practice that is quite successful is that if we start doing voluntary recommendations of if your address ends in an even number, you would water your yard on an even day, odd number of the month, odd day of watering. odd address, odd day of the month watering. Also some conservation suggestions on the amount of water people actually need to do watering their yards. You only need about an inch and a half. That's not your garden. We're just talking about your green grass. The idea is it saves you money. It keeps everybody from drinking at the same straw at the same time. So if we can balance our consumption, we will be better off with what our reliability is on others to produce our own water. So I just wanted to see if we have consensus on doing this voluntary effort.
Guys, what do you think about a campaign where we're trying to educate people on water conservation and suggesting that folks water, on certain days? Is it?
We're significantly down in water. We're not in the state drought yet, but for the year, we're significantly down, so I'm in favor of it. Anything we can do to educate.
It's our future.
Yep.
Thoughts?
I don't water my grass anyway.
Yeah, mine's looking a little shabby at the moment. My HOA hasn't written me a note yet, but I will say, when I do finally set it up, it works off of like AI. Like it's Wi-Fi, and it turns on and it knows when it rains. So I don't know how to change it to an every other day because it does its own thing when it does. But if we're just recommending it, I would say that that's not a bad practice.
We'll provide some resources.
Yeah, I think some resources. I think
Good idea, Dennis.
most people will probably like it, but there'll be some people that they don't.
We're not requiring it. We're
Yeah,
just
just
suggesting
put it out
it.
there.
I support it, and if we could remind people that they might be saving money too, that could be another benefit.
Absolutely.
Yep. Wonderful. Anything else, Dennis?
Yes, just want to update on the sanitation contract that we discussed a few weeks ago. We entered into a time-only extension for 4 months as we get the alternates back to council. And then I just wanted to provide an update on the elevator repair. So we are using the Washington State vendor contract. We have, they have founded the part. We are issuing, I think Friday was the PO is being issued to order the part.
I signed it.
So we are moving that forward as fast as possible. That's it.
And Director Ryan, I just had 2 cents when you were talking about Foster. Well, it wasn't related. You said something that triggered something. I got to spend a couple hours out on a boat with Mayor Barber down in Gig Harbor over the weekend, and they were talking about their new dock they're putting in the water. I said, how are you getting a new structure over water done? And so it may behoove us as a city to interact and find out what their secrets are in working with the tribes down south. But they would know what worked because they got it across the finish line. And it's, is it a see-through beer? It's not even see-through. So they have some kind of, I hesitate to use the word magic down there, but they might have some insight. So
I was on the water on the same day in the same spot. So I believe that was a replacement dock, replacing the existing one. So that could have
I didn't get all the details. I just started asking some questions about, I know, our waterfront stuff, but I would just say that I have no idea, but they got it done. So
No, we'll definitely check and collaborate, see if there's an easier way.
Rocker.
Mine is real quick. It's not really a finance thing, but I hope you all saw the solar panels are up and operational. So we're going to have some monthly reports on the screens up front for the public to see how much we're producing. But I'd like to report as of 21 days of being live and operational, we've produced 6.7 megawatt hours so far, which is about 350 kilowatt hours per day. So to put that in perspective, that 6.7 megawatt hours is enough power to power the average home for at least 7 months. So for our perspective, I tell my staff, it takes roughly 3 days of solar production to produce enough power, okay, that would power our entire electric fleet, or 7 vehicles, for an entire month. 3 days of power generation can fully power our fleet for an entire month. So just kind of perspective on how much power we generate. It's a lot. It's very cool.
How many megawatts again?
6.7.
Over what time period?
21 days.
21 days. I've had a solar array on my house since, and it got turned on in May of 2023. So we are now 2 years into it. I've put 14 megawatt hours out in that time period. So you have a mega array out there doing great work. And it's only going to save us money. I pay $7 a month. PSC has a flat minimum rate they charge. I give everything back in there, but Nice. That's a huge amount of savings.
Huge amount of savings. And the other environmental impact, it's roughly about 78 trees planted in CO2 reduction. So we've reduced about 10,400 pounds of CO2, which is the equivalent of planting almost 78 trees. So.
Can you do me one more favor next 2 weeks? Can you equate that into dollars?
Well, how many trees do you plant each year, Mayor?
No, I'm talking about the megawatts. If we
Yeah,
would have,
money.
us purchasing that the power that we didn't purchase.
Yeah, we're still waiting. I mean, we're only not into our first billing
Yeah,
cycle.
he's not there
Yeah,
yet. He
so
can't.
that'll be the exciting number.
Yeah, there'll be some.
Well, when it gets paid
updates.
off. 'Cause it's,
Yeah.
now, I got a question though on the battery. When you said it lasts like for 7 months for equivalent to all the batteries.
There's no batteries on the solar canopy.
Oh, no, but I meant for, for the, I thought you said for the EVs, that equivalates.
So I said the amount of power we produced
Yeah,
power an average home for about 7 months.
right, and I think.
And another way of looking at it, in 3 days' time of solar production, we can produce enough power that would power our 7-vehicle fleet for an entire month.
Yeah, that's what I meant, yes.
Right.
So, Ms. Mayor, are we kicking that out newsfeed and letting the people know?
We're just starting to get this data, and it's
Yeah.
those displays we have,
Right.
and we're gonna put this information up in the lobby,
Yeah.
and I'm certain we're gonna, once we have more data and
Okay.
can quantify all this, we'll start putting it out in our,
Yeah,
with
this is
our-
great news.
in our,
Website.
yes, thank you. Mr. Bond?
Yeah, I've got 2 announcements. First of all, I'm going to share my screen here. Our pre-approved ADU program is now live, and so we've updated the website to include both the coming soon units as well as the existing available units. There's a user guide, there's fee estimates, and hopefully soon we're going to have some cost to construct estimates from the KBA. And so I'm happy to report that this is the second most shared item on our Facebook page behind the opening of the splash pad. So we're at about 50% of the shares comparatively. We also did attend the farmers market this past Saturday and handed out about 75 flyers. And unlike Comp Plan, where we're trying to get people to talk to us, this is totally people coming to us and saying, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" And so there's a lot of interest. I'd say maybe a third of the people live in the city, and 2/3 are probably not in the city, but we're still getting the word out. So the other announcement, just for next week's council meeting, the middle housing ordinance is coming forward. That's going to be a pretty thick packet. I know you've seen that before, but you may want to start reading ahead on our website before the packet comes out if you want to do a more thorough review.
Remember, that's our second meeting of the month. We don't have a meeting at the end of the month. So, and Councilmember Warden's already informed me that he's on vacation and we'll miss him next week. So he's been excused. So, Ms. Archer, what you got?
I have a couple topics, but I can save them till next week's meeting. They're not time sensitive, so thanks so much.
Chief, what'd you learn out in the hallway?
Yes, so I don't know that I learned more, but I wanted to report out to you guys since I had the opportunity to report to them. So on Monday, I did speak with Mr. Weaver from Port of Bremerton, and they've signed the trespass agreement and have put up appropriate signage in the parking lots down there and then by the bathroom. So that will give us a little bit, a few more options to deal with folks downtown in the evenings. And we also talked about the importance of them calling us when there are issues. We're a data-driven department, and when we don't have the data, I just had an email that said a week ago there were allowed cars. I can't service that as well as I would like. So they've agreed to continue calling, but as we'd already discussed, speeding is an issue throughout our city, throughout our state, throughout our country. We do the best that we can with resources that were provided, but the Port of Bremerton did finally come through, so that's going to give us an extra tool.
That's a big step.
Yep.
So Chief, one of the things that I think I learned from you a few months back was that in terms of engine noise, if it's stock or it's a factory option, we don't have any pull on that.
That's correct.
It's modified, but so were you able to explain to the people that we have no easy way of telling whether it's been a modified exhaust or whether it's a stock?
We spent more talking about just the speeding issues in the drag racing.
Thank you, Chief. You didn't have to step out there and have that conversation with them. I don't speak for everybody here, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have a noise ordinance? Don't we do?
We do.
But you really
But
can't
it-
enforce that.
Yeah, I mean, the issues with the loud mufflers, that's not a noise ordinance issue. When it comes to decibel and distance, that's a piece of equipment that we don't have, and as we've explained before, I mean, again, a lot of this is resource-driven. We have other issues that sometimes triage a little bit higher than being able to spend time down there. But the teams have been contacting those groups on a regular basis, but we didn't have any means to, other than to politely ask them to leave, we didn't have any other means to ask them to go, and we do now.
One thing I heard about the farmer's market, every Saturday, they're picking up bottles and glass and cleaning it up because of people down there partying. And so I don't know, have you ever ran into, kids drinking down there or adults?
Yep.
Yeah, because it's too bad they have to, clean it all up before the farmer's market starts.
I don't think that the people that are drinking on the waterfront are the ones that are interested in cleaning up after themselves.
What do we got from the clerk's office? And
Just a couple quick things. So the coffee with the council is on July 5th. No one has signed up yet, so just a reminder to let Brandy or I know if you guys would like to attend.
All that.
Got one.
Eric, okay, thank you.
That-
I'll go ahead and get you down. The second thing is to please let me know by Thursday if you're going to attend it was the KBA bus tour that you guys were invited to. So far, I do have 2 council members who are attending, so just as a reminder, let me know by Thursday. And I have to ask, Mayor, what was your favorite band?
it depends on what I was listening to that day. But, and that day it was Van Halen, so, I'm running around in a convertible right now. I think it's the Beatles today. All right. HR, what you got, Debbie? Anything? All right. We're going to get to our second citizen comment period. I see Shannon in the audience. And then Jerry.
Mr. Turner.
Why not? You hung out till the end.
My name is Shannon Turner. I'm not a resident of Port Orchard. But I want to say thank you for inviting me to this meeting. I'm a member of the NAACP.
Yeah.
Vice President as well. Your inclusion committee, hands down, I would say impressive. Awesome job. I've seen some reports and things taking place, but what I just heard, what I just witnessed, was very impressive because you guys are continuing to do what you have up here with your guiding principles. And you have a great team. And they understand the goals. Everything is so tangible. Everything is just wrapped around, and it's getting better. And you're identifying it, and you're not giving up on it. So the team that you put together, your committee, is just great and it's phenomenal. And I would say I would take this to the NAACP and do a report out because you guys are the only ones that I see that are actually doing the work. And so, and I would say that, it wasn't always a pleasure when we come here, for you, but, it's changed and it starts from within. And I know Chief Brown, when I talk, we talk a lot. It starts from within, but it's the leadership. And so I commend you guys for sticking to it and getting this done. And most importantly, your community says it all right there. And so I commend you and I thank you. Job well done. So, thank you.
Comment. Jerry, go ahead.
I was wondering, how long is the elevator going to be out of service? Because if there was another policeman here in plain clothing, and if he hadn't been coming down the steps as I was coming up, I probably would not have made it up, but he carried it the last 6 steps with 2 of the center section coming up, and I was kind of pushing my ability at 80. Wow. So.
I signed the purchase order on the parts on Friday, so I think we believe, and so as soon as they can get the parts in and get it repaired, so we want it fixed very badly. It's easier going down though. You've got that little cart and just buckle up and ride it down. I don't know. No? All right.
We're finally at the age where falling
Yes, I know. I didn't mean to make light of it, but we're as soon as they can get the parts in, it's going to be repaired. We know what's wrong with it. Yeah. Yeah, it's great to see you here again. All right. Anybody else? Anybody online? Janine? If you wish to address the council, raise your hand.
We have one person, and they have not raised their hand.
Okay. Eric, anything for the good of the order? Good to see you there, Eric.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, thanks for asking. This last Friday, we had the 2025 senior grad parade, and it was by far the biggest darn thing that we've ever done. It's a lot of work. It's just my friend Kim and myself that do it. So it's a lot of work, but it's more than worth it. But I just want to thank Chief Brown and his staff for working with us. You know, we hire a professional company to do all of the traffic control, all that good jazz, and things are never perfect. But Chief Brown walked the whole thing with me, and we tried to button up areas and add to next year's punch list, you know, of certain things that need to get corrected. But I really appreciate it. Clerk's office, for sure, I appreciate you guys, and Chris and all the public works people. I also want to thank Heidi and Fred for going down there and standing next to road closure signs because we needed more volunteers. That was extremely helpful. Morrissey was down there, and Scott Diener. Another year, Scott walks Port Orchard Boulevard afterwards and picks up tubs of trash to make sure everything is all picked up for us. And it's a lot of work. He picked up not just what the kids left, but he picked up a lot of other signs and whatnot too. So I really appreciate all you guys that helped us out, because it's a huge effort. But I know the school district, I know all the kids, for sure, all the families, they really enjoy it. It means a lot, and we'll continue to try to get better at it. But all you guys' help is, we are extremely thankful. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Eric.
Yep, nice job, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
All right, anything else for the good of the order?
Yeah, maybe I should do a coffee council.
Go ahead.
Okay. It was Councilmember Chineri and myself. I sent off my report to, I probably should have CC'd Ms. Janine. Do you have access to the clerk's email?
The city clerk email, but not.
Okay. All right. So I need to make sure I get that. But we were busy from ding to dong. There wasn't a ton of volume of folks, but we had people there for a long period. We met a new city inhabitant by the name of Christopher, shared a bunch of great insights about things that he had from Oxnard, yes, California. We interacted with a lady by the name of Amanda. She's looking to stand up a permitting consultant business right here in Kitsap. And she goes, I go, yeah, I'm sure there's always lots of jurisdictions. I just encouraged her to get in touch and we can connect with folks. Dale came in and talked about a great website called justserve.com. You should check it out. It's where you can put volunteer opportunities out there for the general public. I thought that was pretty cool.
.org.
Sorry.
Nonprofit. .org.
Thank you. I got that wrong, and I think I put that wrong in my email too. Mark Heinzu came to talk about an affordable housing project he's working on, and then we did have the couple that are in litigation with the city up here, and they were very polite. Their biggest thing for us, because we said we couldn't talk about it, they just wanted to make sure that council was aware, and we did let them know that council was aware. So hopefully our council would tell me that we could say that, but we did. So that was it.
All right. Thank you for that report. Our meeting is adjourned.
Anyway, I talked with, I brought up at the utility